Chapter 245. Chu Xiao pushed the teacup in front of He Yan. He Yan glanced at the teacup but did not touch it. He and I were friends when we were in Jiang and Rundu. Why are we so distant now that we're back in Shuojing? Chu Xiao asked with a smile. He Yan looked at him. I heard that fourth young master was seriously injured a few days ago. Are you okay? I'm fine. Chu Xiao smiled. But I'm happy that he is worried about me. He Yan frowned at him. Why did Chu Xiao's words sound like he was flirting? In the past, when they were in Jiang Rundu, He Yan only took it as a joke and didn't take it to heart. Now that she and Chu Xiao had each been granted a marriage, even if the marriage between Su Pingting and him could no longer be held as scheduled, after all, the status of the two of them was still somewhat subtle. Could it be that he wanted to use her to deal with Xiaoju? He Yan pondered. The remaining members of Su Jingfu's faction had not been completely wiped out, and it was highly likely that they would join Chu Xiao's faction. In that case, Chu Xiao and Xiaoju were still rivals. If Chu Xiao wanted to use her to deal with Xiaoju, would he use his beauty to trick her? That was too much of a sacrifice. Seeing He Yan's strange gaze, Chu Xiao paused for a moment. After a while, as if he had seen through her thoughts, he shook his head and laughed. What is he thinking about now? Fourth young master, He Yan said seriously, where did you get Miss He's hairpin? Young Mistress Su. Chu Xiao said, I saw that he took good care of young Mistress Su, so I ordered someone to take her hairpin. This was not a gentleman's action, but I just wanted to see he. He asked, he is very sincere towards young Mistress Su. The matter between the He and Su clans was ultimately caused by me. I happen to have the same name as Miss He's elder sister who passed away. It's fate, so it's only right for me to take care of her. He Yan answered smoothly. Chu Xiao took a sip of tea and sighed, if that's the case, I really envy Miss He. What are you jealous of? I envy He for being so concerned about her. He Yan, she now understood that Chu Xiao was clearly flirting with her. Moreover, compared to before, he was flirting with her in an unbridled and open manner. He Yan lowered her head and looked at her own hands. Was it because she hadn't shown her kung fu in front of others for a long time that people had forgotten that her fists could smash Shi into pieces? Fourth young master, you didn't ask me to come here to talk about this, right? He Yan asked. If you have something to say, just say it. Chu Xiao smiled and restrained his expression for a moment. He treats me like an enemy now. Is it because of military Governor Xiao? He Yan looked at him and didn't say anything. It's almost the new year. Chu Xiao looked at her with a gentle gaze. There seemed to be a hint of sadness in his eyes. He will be marrying military Governor Xiao soon. Fourth young master, do you want to congratulate me? Chu Xiao shook his head. No, I want to ask you. Are you really going to marry military Governor Xiao? He Yan. Of course. Can you not get married? He Yan was simply baffled. Why not get married? Because, he looked at her with a smile, I like he. He Yan, in her previous life, when she was the second daughter of the He family, although she had interacted with many men, no one had ever confessed to her. Even when she was married to Su Zhiheng had never said the word like. She didn't expect that after her rebirth, so many peach blossoms had bloomed. Putting aside the rotten peach blossom Fan Cheng, whether it was Mu Yi in Jiang City, Xiaoju now, or Chu Xiao now, He Yan had some doubts. The daughter of the He family was quite beautiful, but she couldn't be considered an outstanding beauty. How could she be so attractive? Xiaoju and she were fated to be together for 2 lifetimes. What about Mu Yi and Chu Xiao? They hadn't even spoken to each other a few times. Wasn't it a bit too casual to say that he liked her? Fourth young master, these kinds of words can't be said casually. He Yan composed herself and politely replied. I'm not joking. Chu Xiao looked at her gently, but his gaze was very serious. When I saw he at the Liang province guards, I already liked he. He Yen couldn't help but have goosebumps. She thought that she still wasn't used to hearing such straightforward words of love. Thank you for your love, fourth young master, but, she said, I already have someone I like. Military Governor Shao. Yes. He Yen answered readily. He is always so direct. Chu Zhao was still smiling, but his gaze was a bit dim. He asked, You. Why do you like Military Governor Shao? Why? He Yen was stunned. She never knew that there was a reason to like someone. Liking someone was just liking someone. Why should there be a reason? If she had to give a reason, it was probably because Xiao Ju was really too good. When he saw that she wanted to eat loquat, he secretly stuffed loquats into her bag. He had the brothel mother change the liquor to sweet rose dew. When he knew that she didn't have enough strength to lift a knife in the academy, he purposely chose a knife master. When he saw that she was seasick, he gave her seasickness medicine and lied that it was poison, and so on. What was strange was that he seemed to have never been treated gently by anyone, but he seemed to know how to take care of people. After thinking for a while, she smiled and said, I wasn't very popular in the past. There weren't many people who were good to me. So every person who was good to me, I firmly remembered it. Later, I found out that the people who were good to me were all the same person. How could I not like him? I will also be good to you. Chu Zhao said warmly. He Yen looked up at him. Fourth young master Chu, we are not the same kind of people. There was silence in the tea room. Chu Zhao's eyes were lighter in color. This made him look more gentle than others. But now, his eyes were like fluorite that was about to shatter. They were so fragile that it made people's hearts ache. I am very sad to hear you say that. He Yen said, I'm sorry. Although she had never been good at dealing with intimate relationships between people, He Yen didn't have much struggle in her heart when she said those words to Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao and she were not the same kind of people. This was an undeniable fact. Because of her previous life, she preferred people who were frank and open. She didn't like people who kept 30% of their words and 70% of what they said. They were always unpredictable. In the end, they were adults. He Yen didn't want to make the atmosphere awkward. He smiled. Moreover, I am about to get married. Fourth young master asked the emperor to spare Miss Su's life. Fourth young master doesn't know, she said in a relaxed tone, I'm a jealous person. In the future, the person I marry will not be able to have any other woman in the inner courtyard other than me. Xiao Ju also paid a price to marry me. What's so difficult about that? Chu Zhao looked at her and said seriously, if he is willing to marry me, he will be the only one in my backyard. Pa! Before He Yen could say anything, there was a sudden loud noise. The door behind them was kicked open. Shameless boasting. Someone sneered. He Yen turned around and saw Xiao Ju walk in with an ashen face. Compared to Chu Xilan, his entire body carried the chill of the wind and snow outside. What was even colder than the wind and snow was his expression. He Yen thought that if it weren't for the fact that the city guards were nearby, he might have killed someone. Military Governor Shao came so quickly. Chu Zhao sighed. He stood up and smiled. I almost succeeded. He Yan's expression changed. Almost? What almost? Don't say things that will cause misunderstandings at this time. No. He Yen hurriedly explained. I didn't succeed. I failed from the beginning. Really? Xiao Ju didn't even look at her. He only stared at Chu Xilan. There was a knife hidden in his eyes and his expression was mocking. Military Governor Xiao, in front of a lady, it's best not to be too fierce. Chu Zhao chuckled, then looked at He Yen again. What I said to he today, every word and sentence is this Chu's heartfelt words. If he changes his mind, I will definitely think of a way for he. I also sincerely want to marry he. The last sentence was like honey that had been brewed for a long time. It was so seductive that it caused ripples in people's hearts. However, this ripple didn't even have time to reach her lips before it was cut off by someone's sword. The long table was smashed into pieces by the autumn drink. The teapot and cups on the table shattered on the ground. The sound was especially clear in the night. Xiao Ju's figure was tall and slender. His fingertips were slightly white as he held the autumn drink. His tone was calm, but it also seemed like he was brewing anger. He said indifferently, "Do you think you're worthy?" Chu Xiao looked at him with a smile. The atmosphere was on the verge of exploding. The city guards were not far away. He Yen guessed that if the commotion was any louder, it would attract people. Previously, when Xiao Ju used the autumn drink as the prize on the Heavenly Star platform, there were people who scolded Xiao Ju for being blinded by lust. If this matter were to spread today, wouldn't her reputation of being a femme fatale be confirmed? The heavens took pity on her. She didn't do anything, so why did things become like this? He Yen made a prompt decision. He grabbed Xiao Ju's sleeve and dragged him out. At the same time, he turned to Chu Xiao and said, "It's too late today. Let's not talk anymore. Fourth young Master Chu, goodbye." Chu Xiao smiled and said, "Okay." He Yen dragged Xiao Ju out of the tea room. The two plainclothed children at the door had already disappeared. After taking a few steps out of the courtyard, Xiao Ju suddenly flung his hand away. He Yen was stunned. He saw that this person had already walked in another direction. There was no doubt that he was angry again. However, this time, He Yen could understand. She was about to get married, but she was caught trying to steal someone else's girl. If she were in his shoes, she would also feel unhappy. However, He Yen also felt wronged. She chased after He Xining and saw Chu Xiao. At first, she thought that Chu Xiao had something to say to her. He Yen was still thinking about whether she should beat him at his own game. However, she didn't expect Chu Xiao to confess to her in such a mushy way. She didn't expect this to happen. Sigh. Forget it. Anyway, second young Master Xiao was angry again. She had to calm him down first. "Xiao Ju, slow down. I can't catch up," He Yen called out to him from behind. However, this time, Xiao Ju didn't slow down like before. It seemed that he was very angry. He Yen caught up with him from behind. When she reached him, she turned around and hugged him by the waist. "Stop, don't walk." Xiao Ju was hugged so tightly that he couldn't walk. He didn't look at her and turned his head to look elsewhere. His expression was still very cold. "I'll explain to you," He Yen said hurriedly. "What happened today was definitely an accident. He came to me with Xining's hairpin. I thought that something happened to Xining, so I went to see him. I didn't expect that he was just tricking me to come out and talk to me. I definitely didn't meet him in the middle of the night. There's definitely no affair." It would have been better if she didn't say the last sentence. The moment she said it, the surrounding atmosphere became even colder. "Don't be angry. It's not good for your health." He Yen reached out and rubbed his chest. "You're so young. You're so angry all the time. Be careful that you don't get sick." Xiao Ju blocked her hand and frowned. "Don't touch me." "No." He Yen clung onto him like a rascal. "Unless you're not angry anymore." Xiao Ju took a deep breath and looked down at her. His tone was very cold. "Even if he lied to you, why didn't you leave immediately after knowing that you were tricked?" "I didn't know what he wanted. I thought that he had something important to talk to me about." He Yen explained. "It's so late at night. Since you're already here." He looked at He Yen in disbelief. "Since I'm already here, of course I have to ask you clearly." He Yen said righteously. "How would I know that he was here to talk about some irrelevant things?" Then, he muttered in a low voice, "He scared me to death." Xiao Ju sneered. "I told you to stay away from him." I know. He Yan pointed to the sky and swore. I'll stay away from him in the future. Of course. Who would have thought that Chu Xiao would have such an idea about her? Just thinking about it made her hair stand on end. Xiao Ju's expression softened a little. He Yan looked at him. Seeing that he didn't seem as angry as before, she asked, "But, how did you know that I was here?" She exclaimed. "You got someone to follow me again?" Xiao Ju said angrily, "I didn't follow you. I followed Chu Xilan." He Yan said, "Oh, you care more about Chu Xilan than you do about me. Look at how magnanimous I am. Why am I not angry?" Xiao Ju stared at her without saying a word. "I was joking." He Yan smiled. Suddenly, she thought of something. "When did you arrive?" She was stunned. "You arrived from the beginning." The young man raised his eyebrows slightly. "He Yan, what did you hear?" She asked tentatively. "What should I hear?" He Yan didn't say anything. What should she hear? If Xiao Ju came early enough, wouldn't that mean that Xiao Ju heard everything between her and Chu Xiao? Including her unwavering confession of her love. He Yan let go of his arms and turned her head. She wanted to slap herself hard. Although she herself didn't care about her reputation, now that she thought about it, how many times had she confessed to him? Front and back. She wasn't a confession machine without feelings. How could she be caught every time? It was embarrassing. But this person was too evil. He just listened outside. If she acted closer to Chu Xiao, would she be accused of being an adulterer? She couldn't defend herself. He Yan's thoughts were running wild. She heard him ask, "What are you waiting for?" Seeing that He Yan was looking at her, Xiao Ju paused and said, "Let's go back." He Yan made an "n" sound and walked 2 steps before stopping. He looked at him suspiciously and said, "Xiao Ju." Xiao Ju stopped and turned to look at her. "What's wrong?" "I thought about it carefully. It doesn't seem worth it," He Yan said. "What's not worth it?" He Yan blinked. "How many times have you heard me confess?" "I've never heard you confess." "Xiao Ju, what?" He Yan said it confidently. Don't blame her for being calculative. Now that she thought about it, Xiao Ju was reserved. She always beat around the bush. He Yan didn't understand her words. Anyway. She took a step forward and said, "You didn't say you liked her." "Liked her?" He looked at He Yan and asked. He Yan nodded. "Yes." "Lady He called He Yan's name, which made He Yan quiver. "What do you want to confirm?" He Yan was speechless for a moment. To be honest, she just wanted to take advantage of Xiao Ju verbally and listen to him say something nice. However, Xiao Ju was so serious that she didn't know what to say. She was about to find an excuse to brush him off when the person in front of her took a step forward. The young man's face was close to hers. His face was clean and beautiful. When their eyes met, there seemed to be an inexplicable emotion in his deep black eyes. It made her blush and her heart beat faster. "You." He Yan only managed to say one word before he was interrupted by him. He took a step forward. "The first time I picked loquats was for you. The first time I taught her swordsmanship was for you." He took another step forward. "The first time I helped her apply medicine was for you. The first time I gave her candy was also for you." He took another step forward and pressed on. "The first time I coaxed a girl was for you. The first time I helped her lie was also for you. After thinking about it, the first person I liked should also be you." He Yan was forced to the stone wall behind her. She couldn't retreat. She raised her head and met his smiling eyes. "Lady He, are you sure now?" He Yan listened to her heartbeat and forgot why she asked this question just now. Her gaze moved from Xiao Ju's eyes to the corner of his lips, and she suddenly wanted to kiss him. She did so. She tiptoed and moved closer to the person in front of her. Xiao Ju was startled at first, but then the smile in his eyes grew wider. He leaned forward slightly and was about to touch her. Wow! Shoa City is really degenerating. How can people who are gay be so brazen? I can't watch. Hey, let's go. What are you looking at? I want to see who these two people are. Maybe I know them. The two drunkards pointed at the two of them and stumbled away. Yen was shocked. She forgot that she was wearing men's clothes at night for the sake of convenience. In the eyes of others, it was naturally two men who were whispering sweet nothings to each other. But why were there people wandering around in the middle of the night? Weren't they afraid of bumping into each other? She was annoyed. She didn't know if it was because she almost kissed Xiaoju but missed it, or because she was accused of being gay. She was depressed and buried her head in Xiaoju's arms. She didn't raise her head and said angrily, I'm sure. I'm very sure. Okay, let's go back. Xiaoju lowered his head and glanced at her. He reached out and tried to pull her out, but she hugged him very tightly. After a while, he could only helplessly let go and chuckle. Chapter 246. The new year in Shuajing City was about to arrive. At the end of last year, Yen was in the Yangzhou garrison and couldn't come back. After the new year, she was going to get married again. Sui went to buy a lot of New Year's goods and insisted on celebrating the new year at home. Unfortunately, he wasn't from Shuajing City. Ever since Madame He passed away, there were even fewer relatives in his home. There weren't many who could visit his relatives. However, his neighbors were very enthusiastic. They would send some dried fruits to Yen from time to time. They would send him a plate of cooked dumplings and a piece of cured meat. They would even hold his hand and say, Yen, when you marry into a Shao family in the future and become a young mistress, don't forget about us neighbors. I even hugged you when you were young. Yes, I even sewed clothes for you. Thanks to Xiaoju, they didn't have to buy enough meat this year. However, Yen still bought some things with his own money and asked someone to bring them to Wang Ba and the others. He also gave some gifts to the military instructors. They were in the camp outside the city and could only spend the new year with the soldiers. She was going to get married on the 10th of the new year. Yen wanted Xiaoju to allow them to take a leave. Shi Tu and the others were all her friends who had followed her since she was in the Yangzhou garrison. Yen wanted to invite them to her wedding banquet. However, ever since Xiaoju appeared that day when she met with Chu Zhao, she hadn't seen Xiaoju in the past few days. She was probably busy with the aftermath of the Mingshui case. The sky gradually darkened. They could faintly hear the sound of firecrackers and fireworks in the distance. It wasn't snowing tonight. It was a clear night. Sui moved the table to the courtyard and called Yen and the others to eat. Yen wanted to help with the New Year's Eve dinner, but Sui refused. Sui said, You're going to get married after the new year. How can I let you work? Sit down. Yen, just focus on eating. Yunsheng secretly rolled his eyes. Including Qing Mei, there were only 4 people on the table, but there were 5 pairs of bowls and chopsticks. The empty bowl and chopsticks belonged to the late Madame He. Sui poured everyone a small glass of sweet wine, which was a New Year's gift from his master when he was a bodyguard. Sui picked up the wine glass and took a sip. Looking at the empty bowl and chopsticks, his eyes softened and he sighed. If Ahui was still here, she would be so happy to see Yen get married. Hui was the deceased Madame He. Yen was a little sad. The real second Miss He was gone, but all she could do now was to live on in her place and protect Sui, Yunsheng, and Qing Mei. She had been alone a lot, so she wasn't as depressed as Qing Mei. Instead, she looked at Qing Mei and nodded. We should have called Qi Wu over. Qing Mei was stunned. What does this have to do with Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu? It has something to do with him. Yen also took an orange and said while eating, he lived here every day previously. You didn't say it was lonely. Now that he's not here, you say it's lonely. You're missing him. Qing Mei was stunned. She denied it without thinking. I didn't. Young miss, don't talk nonsense. Actually, it's nothing. He Yan put the peeled orange on the stove to roast. The hall was immediately filled with a fragrant smell. After I go to the Shao family, you'll be the only servant in our family. Of course, you'll have to go with me. At that time, you'll see Qi Wu frequently. At that time, you won't feel lonely anymore. Young Mississippi, Qing Mei anxiously stamped her feet. Servant really didn't mean it that way. I think Qi Wu isn't bad. He Yan deliberately teased her. He's born pretty good. He's also a member of the 9 Flags Battalion. In the future, he might even be able to become an official. Moreover, he listens to you. I saw that he swept the floor when you asked him to and hung the clothes when you asked him to. If he doesn't have feelings for you, why would he listen to you like this? Young miss. Qing Mei was angry. Her face flushed red. She suddenly stood up. She stopped eating the orange and didn't want to stay up all night. She only said, servant didn't mean it that way. Young miss, please don't speak nonsense. There's nothing between me and Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu. She put the orange back and ran away. He Yan asked from behind. You're not staying up all night? I'm not staying up all night. He Yan felt a little regretful. He shouldn't have teased her like this. Now, he could only stay up all night. She picked up the orange that Qing Mei put down and tossed it up. She sighed. You're a little girl who doesn't mean what she says. Someone's voice sounded. You know a lot. He Yan turned around and saw Xiao Ju leaning against the door. She was looking at her with a faint smile on her face. Xiao Ju. She was overjoyed. Why are you here? She looked outside. You came in directly. I knocked on the door. Xiao Ju said as she walked in. However, your house doesn't have any imperial bodyguards. It doesn't make much of a difference whether I knocked or not. She was speaking the truth. He Yan pulled her to sit by the stove and stuffed an orange into her hand. Do you want to eat? Xiao Ju took the orange. She only held it in her hand and didn't eat it. Why are you here? He Yan asked. Aren't you at home with your brother and sister-in-law? After the New Year's Eve dinner, I came to see you. He looked around and said thoughtfully, why aren't your father and brother here? Don't talk about it. They were drunk. I helped them into the room to sleep. She looked at Xiao Ju. If you came a little later, I would have fallen asleep. Xiao Ju said, you were waiting for me. Why would you fall asleep? I wasn't waiting for you. He Yan was confused. Xiao Ju turned his head to look at her and replied with a faint, oh. He Yan grabbed her arm and said sincerely, how did you know that I was waiting for you? It wasn't easy for me to wait for you to show up after everyone fell asleep. Now that there's no one around, it's just nice. Just nice what? Just in time. He Yan was just casually making up a story, so he didn't continue to make it up. He looked up and met his slightly bright eyes. Just nice, I'll treat you to an orange. He Yan held his hand and held the orange in front of him. Xiao Ju looked at her for a while and laughed softly. He Yan felt that he might be a joker. Xiao Ju, who was usually cold and aloof, was always amused by him. This was an ability that ordinary people didn't have. It's boring to sit in the room. Do you want to sit on the roof? He Yan invited him enthusiastically. The roof? He Yan grabbed his hand and walked out. Yes. The He family's house wasn't an expensive house. The roof wasn't very high either. They could reach it with a light jump. She and Xiao Ju sat side by side. She put her hands behind her back and looked into the distance. On New Year's Eve in the Shuo capital, there were fireworks everywhere. They were too far away to see clearly. They could only see the stars flashing across the sky. When I was young and before I went to the military camp, I liked to climb roofs. He Yen said, the He family's roof was higher than this one. At that time, my martial arts weren't good and I couldn't fly up. I could only use the ladder. Once, I fell down halfway. I was afraid that Madam He would find out, so I didn't dare to make a sound. After that, my back hurt a lot. Xiaoju asked, why do you like to climb roofs? Because it's high enough. He Yen made an archery pose. When you climb high enough, you can reach the moon and pick the stars. He chuckled. Childish. Who wasn't childish when they were young? He Yen retorted. Moreover, I haven't climbed roofs for many years. After he joined the army, he lived in a tent. There was no roof to climb. After he got married, he didn't even want to think about it. Now that he thought about it, it was a long time ago that he climbed roofs. If you want, Xiaoju said, the Xiao family's roof is yours. He Yen looked at him and asked tentatively, I can climb roofs after I get married? Yes. Can I bring you with me? Yes. Carrying food, Xiaoju interrupted her. If you want to do it, you can do it. He Yen blinked and lowered her head to smile. She couldn't hide her smile. It was like a rippling water, getting bigger and bigger. Xiaoju glanced at her and seemed to be speechless. After a while, she said, you're so happy just by climbing roofs? Of course, He Yen replied. I'm very easy to satisfy. I don't have any expensive interests. I'm happy as long as I have food, clothes, and a roof to climb. Xiaoju smiled and didn't say anything. He Yen touched his arm. Hey, He Yen said. How's the matter with Su Xiangyu's gang? Xiaoju's smile disappeared. A part of it belongs to Chu Xilan. This was something that He Yen had already expected. She asked, you mean that Chu Xiao's previous righteousness was intentional? Most likely, Xiaoju looked into the distance. He should have replaced Su Jingfu's position in the crown prince's heart. Do you know what the emperor thinks of the Yudo? He Yen asked, after this incident, the emperor won't accept the Yudo's request for peace, right? Xiaoju didn't say anything. After a while, she shook her head. He Yen knew that Emperor Wenxuan was no longer the most important thing. The conflict between the crown prince and the fourth prince would be planned sooner because of Su Jingfu's death. It wouldn't be long before the conflict between the crown prince and the fourth prince would be on the table. Xiaoju and the crown prince and the Guang Yen saw each other as enemies. If there was a conflict in the future, she would definitely stand on the fourth prince's side. However, she didn't have the right to do so. If the emperor wrote an imperial edict to pass the throne, she would at least suffer in terms of reputation. Don't worry, Xiaoju said, I know what I'm doing. He Yen smiled. That's true. Today is the new year. It's better not to think about these things. The wedding dress is ready, Xiaoju suddenly changed the topic. In a few days, it will be sent to your residence. So soon? Xiaoju glanced at her. The wedding is in less than 10 days. How is it fast? He Yen smiled and said, although that's true, but, she didn't feel it usually, but when she heard him say this, she suddenly felt a little nervous. After tomorrow, I won't see you again. He Yen asked, why? Newlyweds can't see each other a few days before the wedding. Xiaoju replied. He Yen said softly, I don't usually see you as a person who follows the rules. Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. What I mean is, He Yen grabbed her hand and said sincerely, you're right. It should be like this. With you taking care of everything, I'm very relieved. She now understood that Xiaoju was a person who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. As long as she said a few words of praise to him, he would be very happy. If she had known that this person was so easy to please, He Yen thought to herself. She should have hugged his leg and flattered him more when they were in the Xianchang gymnasium. Perhaps, other than swordsmanship, he would have taught her knife skills and horsemanship as well. Her acting was clumsy. However, Xiaoju only looked at the hand that He Yan had grabbed. He paused for a moment and then placed her hand in his palm. He Yan. He called her name. Ah. Happy New Year. He said lightly. His black eyes were filled with stars in the night sky. It was more moving than the fireworks in the sky. He Yan was stunned for a moment. A warm feeling of satisfaction gradually rose from her chest. She suddenly felt that this new year was truly a brand new one. You're welcome. She tilted her head and leaned on Xiaoju's shoulder. She rubbed her head. Happy New Year to you too. At the end of the street, the sound of firecrackers could be heard. Every household had new Spring Festival couplets pasted on their doors. Shi Jinbo's residence was especially bleak this year. Originally, according to this time, the Chu family should have just married into the family. It was a perfect day for marriage. Unexpectedly, something happened to the Su family not long ago. Even the Chu family was unlucky. In the end, Chu Zhao put righteousness before family and avoided disaster for the time being. However, because of the marriage between Shi Jinbo and the Su family, he became the laughingstock of the capital. Chu Linfeng cared about his reputation and didn't leave the house for the entire new year. There was no joy in the new year in the residence. It was extremely cold and cheerless. In Chu Zhao's courtyard, there was even more silence. When Su Pingting first arrived, she learned the truth about Su Jingfu's death. Every day in the courtyard, she scolded Chu Zhao for being heartless and repaying kindness with evil. After a few days of being taught the rules by the nannies in the courtyard, she became much quieter. However, because of this, the only bit of liveliness in the entire courtyard dissipated. Chu Zhao sat in the room. The sound of the fireworks was very far away. The outside and inside of the residence were like two completely different worlds. Someone came in from behind. The servant said, "Fourth young master, there's a letter from missing Xiang." Chu Zhao took the letter and read it. After a while, he placed the letter in the flame of the oil lamp and let it slowly burn out. There was also a strangely shaped piece of shirtu on the table. It was as flat as a person's palm. Upon closer inspection, it seemed to be in the shape of a horse. However, the broken part was rough and uneven. It was out of place with the other decorations on the table. Chu Zhao's gaze fell on the piece of shirtu. His expression gradually became distant. The servant paused and struggled for a moment. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Fourth young master, when you saw Miss He that day, why didn't you use young Mistress Su as bait to make Miss He stay?" He Yan valued He Xining so much. If He Xining was used as a threat, He Yan and Xiaoju's marriage might not have been successful. "It's useless," Chu Zhao replied. The servant didn't understand and looked at the person in front of him. The man sat alone in front of the table. The weak light from the oil lamp made his figure appear thin and lonely. It was as if he was the only person in this huge residence. It seemed as if he was going to sit here alone forever. "She's a woman who can control her own fate," Chu Zhao said with a smile after a long time. "No one can threaten her." "I can't, Xiao Huijin can't, and He Xining can't either." The night market in Jiangshui City appeared in his mind. A young girl with bright eyes was walking on the street. The crowd was surging, and the lanterns were bright as day. She just stood there. She was different from the others. She was like an eagle that wanted to spread its wings. With just a glance, he knew that she yearned for the sky and not a cage. He was a person who couldn't control his own fate. That was why he was inexplicably and irredeemably attracted to her. However, he was destined to be abandoned. Because just as she said, they weren't the same kind of people. They never were. Chapter 247. The days from the new year to the 10th seemed to pass very slowly, but also seemed to pass very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of He Yan's wedding. Early in the morning, Xia Qingxiu rushed over in a carriage. The He family had very few relatives in the capital. Because of the death of Madame He, they had long lost contact. Afraid that no women would come to help, Xiao Zhu asked Yan He to invite Xia Qingxiu over. Of course, Yan He was extremely unwilling, but Xia Qingxiu was easy to talk to and came over early. She combed He Yan's hair and said with a smile, "Miss He, don't worry. Today, I will dress you up as the most beautiful bride in the capital." He Yan smiled and said, "It's not that important whether I'm beautiful or not." "That's true." Xia Qingxiu put down the comb, "As long as military governor Xiao thinks it's good, then it's fine." He Yan couldn't help but feel his teeth ache. Qing Mei came over with a box and said, "Miss, change into the wedding dress first." The dress was sent over by the Xiao family yesterday evening. It was a bit late at the time, so He Yan just tried it on and confirmed that it fit. Now that the box was opened, Xia Qingxiu exclaimed in surprise. He Yan asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "This embroidery." Xia Qingxiu gently touched the pattern on it. "It looks like De Wei's long-lost Wuzhuang embroidery." "What's Wuzhuang embroidery?" Qing Mei was also puzzled. It's a cloth shop that was famous for its embroidery skills, but it disappeared later. Back then, the owner's daughter, Ruxing, had uncanny embroidery skills. Even the nobles in the palace rarely had a piece of cloth. Xia Qingxiu smiled. Military Governor Xiao found an embroiderer from somewhere to make this wedding dress. It's clear that he put in a lot of effort. He Yan was slightly startled and took the wedding dress out of the box. Qing Mei helped He Yan get dressed. The wedding dress had a top and a lower garment, with colorful dragons and phoenixes embroidered on the front. The hem of the long dress was huge, and the corners of the dress were embroidered with fine cloud patterns with golden red silk thread. It was very charming and beautiful. The wedding veil hung down from the shoulders to the front, with a golden jade pendant hanging from it. It wasn't easy to put on the clothes and required the help of Xia Qingxiu and Qing Mei. It took them a long time to put them on. At this moment, He Yan had yet to tie up his hair. Qing Mei giggled as she took out the phoenix coronet and pretended to put it on He Yan's head. "Miss, take a look at this first." He Yan looked at herself in the mirror. Her phoenix coronet was not like the other aristocratic daughters' coronets, which were made of gold and jade and inlaid with jade. On the contrary, it looked exceptionally small, as if it was made of silk and was as thin as a cicada's wing. It was studded with rubies and pearls. When she wore it on her head, it was as if she was covered in a layer of red clouds. The crystal beads by her ears made her face look exceptionally white and beautiful. "Miss, you are so beautiful." Qing Mei looked at her in a daze. She had been by He Yan's side since childhood and knew that He Yan was born beautiful. But now, it was as if the dust on the gemstone had been brushed away. It was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off her. Military Governor Xiao is very good at choosing wedding dresses. Xia Qingxiu was also stunned. After a while, he smiled and said, "Among the brides who have been married in the Shua capital these years, if we talk about wedding dresses, none can compare to the one Miss He is wearing." He Yan also felt that this wedding dress was very beautiful. Unfortunately, she didn't have any talent in poetry and couldn't come up with any beautiful words to praise it. She could only secretly praise it in her heart. When He Yan got married in the He family, the wedding dress was also expensive and fitting. But when she wore it, He Yan felt a little uncomfortable. Later on, when he thought about it, that wedding dress was especially charming and elegant. It was completely different from her own temperament. But the dress in front of him in the mirror, from head to toe, was perfectly ironed. "Sit down first." Xia Qingxiu took the phoenix coronet away. "I will comb your hair first. After I comb your hair, you can wear the phoenix coronet. It should look even better." He Yan was pressed into a chair by Xia Qingxiu and watched as she combed his hair. Qing Mei stood to the side with a small box of jewelry. From time to time, she handed Xia Qingxiu a pearl hairpin to comb his hair. Suddenly, she felt a little disappointed. From now on, Miss will have to wear her hair in a bun. Time really flies. After getting married, He-Yen naturally had to wear her hair in a woman's bun. But when He-Yen was in this small courtyard, she was still a child. Ching Mei still remembered the first time she saw her Mississippi. At that time, He-Sui brought Ching Mei back to the He family. Ching Mei saw a little girl with messy hair standing at the door and staring at He-Sui aggressively. He-Sui wanted to drive her away. Ching Mei suppressed the fear in her heart and timidly stepped forward. "Miss, don't drive this servant away. This servant knows how to comb your hair." She combed her hair for so many years. The long hair of the woman in the mirror was combed until it was as smooth as silk. Then, Xia Qingxiu gently coiled it up with a pearl hairpin, followed by a silk flower, an agate, a silver buyao. Xia Qingxiu combed her hair very carefully, as if he was decorating a flower that was about to bloom. He couldn't wait to use all the beautiful and good things on her. The woman in the mirror went from not wearing any makeup to a voluptuous and beautiful face. Her face gradually became clearer. He-Yen looked at the person in the mirror in a daze. She didn't know that a woman could be so beautiful when she got married. At this time, someone knocked on the door. The sound was very soft. Ching Mei went to open the door. When she saw the person outside, she said with some confusion, "You, Miss He?" He-Yen was startled and then stood up. He Xining walked out from behind the door. She seemed a little nervous. She first looked at He-Yen and was startled. It wasn't until Xia Qingxiu asked softly, "Miss?" she finally reacted. "I heard that Miss He is getting married today, so I wanted to come and take a look." He Xining bit her lip and took out a palm-sized box from behind her back. "This is my wedding gift. After the accident at home, I didn't have much left. This is the earring my mother gave me when I got married. I heard that it was left to her by my grandmother. I don't have anything valuable, only this." He Xining paused. She lowered her head and said, "If Miss He doesn't like it," the next moment, the box was taken. He-Yen smiled at her. "That's great. I'm getting married today, but the earrings I got don't look very nice." She opened the box. There was a pair of amber earrings in the shape of a phoenix. She took it out. "This earring looks just right. It matches my wedding dress very well." "Xining," she called intimately. "Help me put it on." He Xining was stunned. She asked uncertainly, "Me?" "Yes." He-Yen took her hand and put the earrings in her palm. "Help me put it on. It's also good to get some of the joy." It was obviously winter, but the hand holding He Xining's hand felt warm. For a moment, He Xining's heart ached. She had mustered up all her courage to come here today. She was now the daughter and wife of a sinner. Wherever she went, she would be looked at with disdain by others. Coming here, she was really afraid that He-Yen would dislike her. It took her a lot of effort to explain to Wei Furen. When she reached the door, she hesitated for a long time, not daring to enter. But now, He-Yen looked at her as if she was no different from other people. He Xining composed herself. She carefully picked up the earrings and put them on He-Yen's ears. After that, she took 2 steps back and looked at the person in front of her. She murmured, "Miss He, you're really beautiful." Her eyes slowly overflowed with a burst of sourness, and she thought of the day when she would be married. In fact, at that time, she was also nervous and perturbed, as well as a little expectant and shy. At that time, second Madam He also put this earring on He Xining's ear. At that time, He Xining thought that she was going to start a new and happy life, but it turned out that the marriage was so unbearable. The bride in front of her was really beautiful. He Xining thought. She really envied He-Yen. He-Yen's gaze fell on He Xining's eyes. She paused and suddenly took a step forward. Ignoring her complicated dress and the bun on her head, she gently hugged He Xining. He Xining was stunned. "Miss He, you'll be beautiful like this in the future." The warmth in front of her was so real that it made her feel like she had found someone to rely on. But she just lowered her head in panic and said helplessly, "No. I won't have a better time." One after another, the sudden changes in her family and the sudden change in her status were enough to make the arrogant and willful young lady become inferior and timid in a short time. He Yan's heart ached. She slightly tightened her arms around He Xining and whispered, "Don't forget, you're General Fei Hong's sister." After a pause, she continued, "And also my sister." He Xining's heart trembled. The bride had already let go of her arms. She stood on the spot and looked at her. Her gaze was sincere and warm. "The first time I saw you, it was at Yuhua Temple. Xining, you may not know, but Yuhua Temple is really efficacious. Buddha will bless the pious and make their wishes come true. So, you'll definitely get better and better," she said. He Xining was stunned for a moment. After a while, she slowly smiled and looked at He Yan. "Okay. Since you're here," He Yan pulled her to the side, "come and help. There are really few women in our family. Qingxiu can't handle it alone. Xining, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you for a while." He Xining quickly waved her hand, "No trouble, no trouble." By the way, the bride seemed to have thought of something and smiled at her in the mirror. "You can call me sister in the future. Is it done or not?" He Yunsheng paced back and forth outside. He was a little nervous. "What's the hurry?" He Sui scolded him, "Your sister is dressing up inside. Of course, we have to take it slow." Although he said that, his eyes were filled with anxiety. The bottom of his newly made robe was wrinkled. He and He Yunsheng had also changed into new clothes. He Yunsheng had grown a lot taller, and with a change of clothes, he looked like an elegant young man. He Sui, on the other hand, had been a martial artist his whole life and rarely had the time to dress up. Now that he thought about it, the last time he dressed so grandly was when he got married. Time passed quickly. Now, it was his daughter's turn to get married. As he was thinking, the door inside opened with a creak. Xia Qingxiu and He Xining walked out. Qing Mei followed behind them. Xia Qingxiu smiled and said, "Master He, Miss He has finished dressing up. You can go in and talk to her." "Ah. Okay. Thank you very much, Miss Xia." He Sui couldn't wait to get up and walk in. He Yunsheng also followed in. Qing Mei covered her mouth and smiled. She closed the door again. He Yan turned around and saw He Yunsheng and He Sui standing in front of him. They were stunned and didn't speak. "What's wrong?" She carefully took a step forward. He Sui slammed the land deeds on the table and said to He Yan, "No, you have to listen to me on this matter. Yan, take it. If you don't take it, I won't let you go out of this door." He Yan, she said, "Okay, I'll take it." She thought to herself, "Forget it. I'll find a way to put it back the next time we meet." He Sui looked at He Yan and said with emotion, "When your mother died, you and your brother were the ones she couldn't let go of the most. I swore before her death that I would never remarry and raise you and your brother well. Yan, now that you have a good husband, the sure too and father's heart is half relieved." He reached out and wanted to touch He Yan's head, but he was afraid that he would mess up He Yan's hair bun. In the end, he only touched her head gently and then withdrew his hand. "Your temperament is very different from your mother's. Originally, father thought that you were arrogant and willful and was afraid that you would be taken advantage of. Now, it seems that you are strong and have your own ideas. Even if you don't marry Xiao Huaijin, you can still live a good life if you marry someone else. Father is proud of you." He Yan looked at the man in front of her. In her previous life, she had only been used and disappointed by the word father. Now, God seemed to want to compensate her by sending the world's best father to her. She now knew that a father's shadow could be so gentle and strong, silently loving his children as always. "Father." She held He Sui's calloused hands and said with a smile, "Thank you. I am also proud of you." Qing Mei's voice came from outside. "Miss, the wedding procession is almost here." "Master," if you are done talking, quickly come out. Don't miss the auspicious hour. He Sui helplessly let go of her hand and looked at He Yen again. He was reluctant to part with her, as if he had thousands of words to say. In the end, he could only force out one sentence. Yen, father will go out first. He Yen nodded. Qing Mei came in and asked He Yunxing to wait at the door. She tidied up He Yan's clothes and carefully covered He Yen with a veil. She held He Yan's hand and walked towards the door. She said softly, Miss, you must not be nervous. Don't be nervous. When she spoke, her voice was slightly trembling. He Yen wanted to laugh. She was getting married, not going to a fire. Everyone in the He family was making the atmosphere of life and death. When they reached the door, Qing Mei said, Young master, Miss is coming out. The bride was to be carried on the back of her brother to the bridal sedan. He Yunxing half-squatted and said nervously, Come up. He Yen climbed on his back. The young man looked tall and thin, but his back was broad and warm. He Yen held his neck with both hands and whispered when no one else could hear, Yunxing, have you eaten breakfast? Shut up. He Yunxing was a little nervous at first, but after being interrupted by her, his sadness disappeared. He only said, I told you not to eat. You are so heavy. Am I heavy? He Yen frowned slightly. You can't even carry me. How are you going to carry your beloved girl in the future? If that girl was as heavy as you, she wouldn't be my beloved. He Yunxing gritted his teeth. He Yen said, When I was in the Liang province guards, I could lift Tu Shi Tu who was as heavy as me. Little brother, she reminded him thoughtfully, you need to exercise more. Can you stop talking? He Yen said, Oh. Sure enough, he stopped talking. The road from the door to the bridal sedan wasn't long, but He Yunxing walked very slowly. After He Yen really stopped talking, he fell silent again. After a while, he said, He Yen. What? Now that you are with the Shao family, you can eat whatever you want. Didn't you tell me to eat less? If you really want to eat, then eat. He Yunxing frowned. You are already like this in your own home. You can't behave properly in other people's homes. In any case, just treat the Shao family as your own home. Don't let yourself suffer. If anyone bullies you, just tell me. Even if I have to tear down the Shao family's door, I will stand up for you. He Yen leaned on his back. No one could see that her face under the veil was twitching with laughter. Thank you. But I don't think anyone would dare to bully your older sister. If someone really does bully me, I will get back at them myself. But you, she lectured He Yunxing, after I leave, don't always go against father. He is old. Why are you always arguing with him? Give in to the elderly. And you, be more generous in the academy. Your older sister is an official of the imperial court, and your brother-in-law is a famous general of the Dewey. Let's not talk about squandering money like it doesn't matter. Occasionally, you can pretend to be a hedonistic son. He Yunxing was speechless when he saw that her words were getting more and more out of hand. After a while, he said, We're here. The bridal sedan was right in front of them. He Yen got down from He Yunxing's back and was helped into the bridal sedan by Qing Mei and Xia Qingxiu. The bridal procession had already arrived. She could hear the discussions of the people around her. Some of the voices reached He Yan's ears. Hey, isn't that Military Governor Shao? Military Governor Shao is here. He's here, he's here. Aya, he's so handsome. He also has a noble aura. What kind of luck did that girl from the He family walk on? How did she meet such a good marriage? Speaking of which, our little peanut isn't bad either. Are they still accepting people? Even if she is sent in as a concubine, she will be pretty when she has children in the future. Bah, you're dreaming. If they really want to accept people, it won't be your family's turn first. My little Yezi is still unmarried. He Yen sat in the bridal sedan and listened to the people's words. She really wanted to lift the curtain of the bridal sedan to see what the groom looked like. Speaking of which, she had never seen Xiaoju in a red dress. She didn't know if she was as graceful as the moon and as beautiful as flawless jade. She could only faintly hear the sound of Xiaoju bowing and saying goodbye to Hisui. It seemed like they were releasing the betrothal gifts and sending off geese. Then, the bridal sedan slowly got up and moved forward. This was the start of the bridal sedan. Accompanied by the sound of the bridal sedan rising, the children around them cheered. General Fengyun in Showa capital was getting married. Not only did the streets turn out, but both sides of the streets were also filled with people watching the ceremony. Xiao family's welcoming team was generous and casually threw out some money. The children laughed and fought over it, distributing the wedding candies to their new friends. Shenhan and Liang Ping were walking on the bridge when they heard the sound of gongs and drums from afar. The Liangzhou Guards instructors, as well as Wang Ba's group, were granted a rare day off. Today, they could personally attend Xiaoju and He Yan's wedding banquet. At this time, they were going to follow the welcoming team to the Xiao Manor. I really want to see what He Go looks like in a wedding dress. Xiao Mai stared unblinkingly at the approaching bridal sedan. Are you still calling her He Go? Hong Shan asked. I can't change it. Xiao Mai scratched her head. Wang Ba snorted, in any case, I can't imagine what she looks like in a wedding dress. She's just a female bandit. No, Jiang Jiao said with a smile, brother He's beauty is naturally different from the rest. We're almost there. Huang Xiong also smiled, why don't we also go and steal some money? Let's get some luck. Uncle, you're already so old. Xiao Mai couldn't help but say, what's the use of getting some luck? It's better to let my brother go. He pushed Shi, big brother, you go and steal. Shi looked seriously and didn't say anything. While they were talking and laughing, more children with the welcoming team ran over. Xiao family's wedding money was abundant. The children from poorer families in Showa capital followed them from the beginning to the end of the wedding banquet. At this time, the man walking in front threw out a handful of money. The copper coins tied with a wedding string bounced to the bridal sedan chair and rolled down the bridge. A thin and small boy bent down to pick up the money at the bottom of the sedan chair. However, he was too thin and weak. Unexpectedly, he was pushed lightly and fell back. At this time, they were at the edge of the bridge. The bridge railings were low. The crowd screamed and the child fell off the bridge. Ah! The child screamed in fear. In the next moment, someone flew out of the bridal sedan chair. Her robe was red like smoke. She grabbed the falling boy and held him in her arms. She stepped on the railings and landed lightly on the ground. The veil had already fallen to the ground the moment she flew out, revealing the face of the bride under the phoenix coronet. Her hair was black and her amber earrings were slightly trembling. Her red robe was embroidered with phoenixes. Her eyes were clear and bright, like the clearest stream in Showa capital. There was a bit of confusion and a bit of realization. She was completely different from those delicate and charming brides who were shy and timid. She was also like the morning sun shining on the snow. There was a moment of silence on and under the bridge. It was unknown whether they were shocked by the sudden change or shocked by the bride's face under the veil. Ah, someone's voice broke the silence. The veil fell. What should we do? It's inauspicious. He Yan let go of her hand. The little boy saw that he had caused trouble and ran away. She stood in the same place, not knowing what to do. Just now, when she was in the bridal sedan chair, she heard that something had happened. In a moment of panic, she acted without thinking, but forgot that she was in the middle of a wedding banquet. Was this inauspicious? He Yan felt uneasy. Someone walked over and bent down to pick up the veil that had fallen to the ground. He Yan looked up at him. It was the first time she had seen someone wear the color of raging flames in such a restrained manner. The bright red robe made the young man look like jade and gold. When he walked over step by step, he looked elegant. Back then, the beautiful young man with a golden saddle and a white horse, in the flowing years, gradually became high-spirited and handsome. In his bright and luxurious clothes, his charm was cold and elegant. He walked closer step by step until he was in front of the woman wearing the phoenix coronet. He Yan looked at him. She could see herself clearly in his limpid eyes. "Young master." The old woman at the side gathered her courage and stepped forward. "The veil has fallen to the ground. It's inauspicious, so what?" he said faintly. Then, he picked up the veil and gently put it back on the bride's coronet. He Yan's vision was blocked again. But at this moment, even in the darkness, she felt extremely at ease. She heard Xiao Ju's voice. "It's okay." Chapter 248. The incident at the bridgehead did not affect the wedding procession. The bridal sedan was lifted again and the procession slowly moved forward. Shinhan's anxious heart finally calmed down. He patted his chest and said, "You scared me to death." Fortunately, nothing happened. "Chief Instructor, did you see that?" Mrs. Skills did not fall behind. Liang Ping touched his chin and said, "Her movements just now were so swift. She is indeed a soldier that I taught." "Are you proud of the soldier that you taught?" Shinhan glanced at him. "If you have the ability, say it again in front of the commander-in-chief." "I don't dare." Liang Ping smiled embarrassedly. "We shouldn't call her Miss He now, right?" Ma Damei moved forward and said, "Should we call her young madam?" "That's not right." Liang Ping scratched his head. "She has an official position now. We should call her madam." Then, "Madam Xiaohe." Why does she sound like a man? Xiao Mai bent down to pick up a piece of wedding money on the ground. Just as she straightened up, she heard the aunt beside her say, "How could Military Governor Xiao pick up the veil on the ground by herself just now? How inauspicious." "That's right." The bride's face was seen by others. "She is not particular about etiquette. I heard that she was originally a woman from an ordinary family. It's natural that she doesn't know these rules." "That's not right, hey." A loud shout interrupted the women who were gossiping together. The women turned their heads and saw a strong man with a scar on his face staring at them fiercely. He shouted, "If she didn't go out, that boy would be dead now. You people are just standing there and talking. What the hell do you know?" The women were shocked. The leading woman retorted fiercely, "We are talking among ourselves. What does it have to do with you?" Wang Ba pulled out the long knife at his waist. When the women saw this, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. They stopped arguing with Wang Ba and turned to run away. Jiang Jiao coughed softly. "Brother Wang, you don't have to scare them like that, these shrews only know how to gossip behind people's backs. I don't like listening to them." Wang Ba sheathed his saber and scowled. "What bullshit rules are they? Who made the rules? If I say there is no such rule, then there is no such rule." He was used to being overbearing, so Jiang Jiao could only smile helplessly. Mai, on the other hand, shared his hatred for a common enemy. "That's right. Why don't they say that brother he saved someone just now? Forgive me too." Hong Shan leaned against the railing of the bridge and smiled. "The three men that women in Shoa capital want to marry the most have been taken away by your Ahigo. I'm not happy about it, but what's wrong with my mouth? Where it's possible to make mistakes, one should forgive them. Brother He's meddlesome nature hasn't changed even after becoming a woman." Huang Xiong shook his head and sighed. "Seeing someone in trouble, you want to save them regardless of the situation. I think that lady He is no different from He Yen of the Liangzhou guards." Wang Ba snorted. "Otherwise, it wouldn't be like her. Let's go." He put away the string of wedding money he had just stolen. The procession has gone far. The bridal sedan circled around half of the capital before arriving at Shaofu. Before getting off the sedan, Qiwu handed over a bow and arrow. A youth wearing wedding clothes walked to the front of the sedan and shot 3 red arrows towards the bottom of the sedan. The red arrows were firmly nailed into the bottom of the sedan to ward off evil spirits. Bai Rongwei helped He Yan down from the bridal sedan and handed the red string tied with a concentric knot to Xiao Ju and He Yan's hands. He Yan had a veil over her head and couldn't see anything. She had been blind for a long time and was used to being able to walk by herself even in the dark. But today, she had completely given herself to another person and entrusted her entire body and mind to him. The bride held the concentric knot and was carefully led over the brazier towards the auditorium. The auditorium was already filled with people who were watching the excitement. Lin Shuanghe stood at the very front with a face full of smiles. He glanced at his expression and couldn't help but say in disgust, "What's with your expression? Those who don't know would think that you're marrying a wife today. This is even more delightful than me marrying a wife." Lin Shuanghe opened his fan. "What is more delightful than your close friend marrying your close friend? Your close friends are too many and too cheap." He mocked him. "Brother," Lin Shuanghe looked at him. "A loner like you doesn't even have many friends. Why did you come to our Huijin's wedding? You think I really wanted to come?" He sneered. "He Yan sent an invitation to Qingxiu and Qingxiu forced me to come. Who wants to see Xiao Huijin get married? Who hasn't gotten married before?" He glanced at Lin Shuanghe. "Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot. You haven't gotten married before. What do you know?" Lin Shuanghe closed his fan and smiled. "I won't give up the entire garden for a flower." He replied with a cold laugh. As they spoke, He Yan and Xiao Ju had already arrived in front of the incense table. After the music was played and the firecrackers were fired, the two of them first offered incense and candles to the gods and ancestral tablets. Then they offered incense, prostrated themselves, and returned to their original positions. Then, the couple bowed 3 times. Xiao family's parents were no longer there. Bai Rongwei invited the memorial tablets out of the ancestral hall. After paying respects to the heaven and earth, the husband and wife faced each other. He Yan lowered his head and bowed. Suddenly, it seemed that a long life had passed. When he got up, the crowd cheered. Qing Lisu's excited shouts were mixed in. "Send them to the bridal chamber. Hurry, uncle, hurry up and lift the veil. I want to see aunt." Song Tao Tao frowned slightly. "Lower your voice." "Why lower my voice?" Qing Lisu's face was full of excitement. "Don't you want to see what aunt looks like in her wedding dress?" Song Tao Tao silently rolled her eyes. She really didn't want to see. Who would want to see their sweetheart marry someone else in a phoenix coronet and a red wedding gown? But there was still someone beside her who didn't understand her meaning. "Ah! I didn't expect my brother to become my aunt in the end. It's unbelievable." He Yan was led into the bridal chamber by Qing Mei and Bai Rongwei. They temporarily avoided the noisy crowd outside. She was covered by the veil and couldn't see anything. As soon as she sat down, she was startled. She reached out and grabbed a few longans. Bai Rongwei smiled. "Congratulations, He. It seems that you and Huijin will have a child soon." He Yan, Qing Mei quickly smoothed out the wrinkles on He Yan's wedding dress. Then, she hurriedly stuffed 2 snacks the size of a finger into He Yan's mouth. She whispered, "Miss, eat a few bites to fill your stomach first. The young master will be here soon to lift the veil. Eat carefully. Don't rub off on your fat." He Yan was originally calm, but after hearing Qing Mei's words, he became nervous. However, eating something could indeed ease one's nerves. She ate 3 or 4 bites in a row. Then, Qing Lisu's excited voice came from outside. "Uncle, hurry up. Don't make my aunt wait." Immediately after, Song Tao Tao retorted, "You should shut up. I think you're the most anxious one." A group of people walked over noisily. He Yan thought that he had seen a lot of wind and waves in his 2 lives, but at this moment, his palms couldn't help but be covered in a thin layer of sweat. The bridal chamber was actually very spacious. However, Lin Shuanghe, Cheng Lisu, and Liang Ping all squeezed in. No matter how big the room was, it wasn't big enough. Xiao Jing handed the red cloth-wrapped weighing scale to Xiao Ju. She said, "Huijin, it's time to pick the bridal veil." Xiao Ju took the bridal veil and slowly walked in front of He Yan. He Yan sat with his head lowered. She could see his black boots under the veil. Suddenly, she pursed her lips. From today onwards, she had never officially met Xiao Ju. However, after taking off the veil, her life would be closely linked to Xiao Ju's life. He would become the person who stood side by side with her. How would Xiao Ju see her? He Yan's thoughts ran wild. At this moment, she felt as if she had returned to her previous life. She sat in front of the mirror and slowly took off her mask. She looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar face under the mask. It was like a dream, real yet illusory. The bridal veil hooked around the edge of the bridal veil. Then, her eyes lit up. He Yan grabbed the corner of his robe and slowly raised his head to look at the person in front of him. She fell into a pair of black eyes. In an instant, the moonlight was blurred and the blue sky was bright. The man stood a step away from her and looked down at her. His red robe was like fire. In this crowd, he was stunningly beautiful. His eyes were like the night sky, but in the night sky, she could see a complete and clear reflection of herself. In his eyes, there was no one else but herself. He Yan looked at him in a daze. It was as if she wanted to look at him forever. The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. After some time, Lin Shuanghe shouted exaggeratedly, "Oh my God! I've attended at least 8 wedding banquets, if not 10, but this is the first time I've seen such a beautiful bride. How lucky is our Huijin to be able to marry a fairy who descended from the heavens. How much good karma did you cultivate in your previous life to be able to have such good fortune in this life? Are you here to perform?" Yan He dug his ears and said disdainfully, "You're such a smooth talker." Shen Han and the other instructors were stunned. Liang Ping even blushed and said, "I didn't expect He Yan to be even more beautiful than Dr. Shen in a wedding dress." "If you want to die, I won't stop you," Shen Han warned in a low voice. "Don't drag me down with you. My aunt is so beautiful. She's my aunt." Cheng Lisu clenched her fists excitedly. "I announce that the most beautiful woman in Shua City is my aunt." Song Tao Tao held her forehead. However, from a woman's point of view, He Yan was too beautiful today. Although she was charming when she was dressed as a man, when she sat there and looked up at the man in front of her, her eyes sparkled like stars in the Milky Way. "Brother Wang," Xiao Mai asked Wang Ba, "this time you have to admit that He Gu is really beautiful." Wang Ba waved his hand impatiently. "She's just a so-so." He couldn't help but take a few more glances. "Brother, he is very good," Jiang Jiao said with a smile. "I see that military governor Xiao treats her very well. When men look at other men, they always have a lot of understanding." Bai Rong smiled and reminded him softly, "It's time to drink the nuptial wine." He Yan came back to his senses and stood up with Qing Mei's help. Xiao Ju picked up the pot on the table and divided it into 2 cups. He Yan carefully picked up 1 cup and held his wrist as he lowered his head and drank. Bai Rong smiled and said, "After the nuptial wine, husband and wife become one, equal in status, and never leave each other." He Yan let out a sigh of relief. He didn't know why, but he didn't dare to look up at Xiao Ju. After the nuptial wine, the groom had to go to the front of the hall. The group of people crowded around Xiao Ju and left. Only Qing Mei and He Yan were left in the room. He Yan waited until the door closed and sat down on the couch. He patted his chest and said, "It's finally over. I was almost nervous to death." "Eh?" Qing Mei asked curiously, "Miss, were you nervous just now?" This servant saw that Miss was very relaxed. Relaxed my ass, it was all an act. He Yen took off the phoenix coronet on his head. The coronet looked small and cute, but when it was decorated with pearls and jewels, it was very heavy. After holding it up for so long, his neck was a bit sore. Qing Mei helped He Yen put the coronet to the side. Seeing He Yen already unbuttoning the wedding dress, she was shocked and quickly stopped He Yen's hand. "Miss, you don't need to take off your clothes. This room is really hot, and there are so many clothes," He Yen said helplessly. In order to avoid the cold, the heater in the room was very strong. Her wedding dress had 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. It was winter, so her forehead was even sweating. However, Qing Mei was very stubborn. "No, miss, you have to listen to this servant. You can't take off your clothes." He Yen and her deadlocked for a while. Finally, he admitted defeat and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." She stood up. After sitting in the sedan chair for half a day, her legs were numb. She poured herself a cup of hot tea. While drinking, she looked at the bridal room. As she looked, her expression became strange. When he first returned to Shuajing, He Yen lived with the Shao family for a period of time. He also went to Shao Ju's room. Shao Ju's room looked cold and simple. The color was also very plain. It was either white or black. In this bridal room, other than the sheet character and red paper, the other decorations looked very gaudy. Even the legs of the table were padded with a layer of light pink cloth. He Yan's mouth twitched when he saw this. How did Shao Ju's taste change so much in such a short time? She didn't care. Moving from Lady He's room to this room was just a change of place. But didn't Shao Ju feel uncomfortable? Look at the bronze mirror with the lace border, look at the pink curtain with the sachet hanging on it. It was a living room of the Qin dynasty. It was simply crazy. Just as she was thinking, she heard Qing Mei calling her in a small voice, "Miss, miss." He Yen turned around and saw Qing Mei standing by the bed. She had a difficult expression on her face, so he asked, "What's wrong?" "Miss, Madam passed away early. When Miss got married, although there was Miss Qingxiu was still young. A few days ago, Aunt Lu in the alley gave this servant something." Her face was flushed red and she stuttered as if she found it hard to speak. She trembled as she took out something from her bosom. She didn't dare to look at it and stuffed it into He Yan's hand. Aunt Lu said that when Miss got married, her mother would give her this. So this servant took it back. He Yan looked down and saw a palm-sized booklet in her hand. She looked at Qing Mei suspiciously. When she opened it, she saw Qing Mei turn around in a panic. He Yan glanced at it. "Isn't this a picture of spring?" "Miss." Qing Mei's eyes widened and she forgot to be shy. "How can you say it out loud?" "Then how can I say it out loud?" He Yan asked her, "Have you seen it? If you haven't, why are you so nervous?" This servant only took a glance. Qing Mei was so anxious that she was about to cry. "No, miss, this isn't for this servant to see. This is for you." When Qing Mei gave He Yan this booklet, she was very conflicted. After all, she was an unmarried girl and she didn't know how to give He Yan something like this. Who knew that He Yan would be so magnanimous and casually flip through the booklet? He even commented, "Aunt Lu is too stingy. Isn't this booklet from 3 to 5 years ago? The style is so old-fashioned." Since she wanted to give a wedding gift, why didn't she give something more recent? "TSK, TSK, TSK, it's not as good as the one I used to read." "Miss." Qing Mei looked at her in disbelief. "The one you used to read? When did you read it? Where did you read it?" He Yan remembered that in this servant's heart, she was probably still the same old lady so he said perfunctorily, "I'm just talking nonsense. Forget about it." She turned and left, but Qing Mei followed her like a tail. "Miss, please tell me clearly. When did you read it?" "I don't remember." After a long time, the sky gradually darkened. He Yan finished all the exquisite snacks on the table and heard some noise from outside. She quickly sat up straight and pretended to be dignified and polite. Qing Mei went to open the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Lin Shuanghe supporting Xiao Ju as they walked in. Eh? Qing Mei was startled. Is young master drunk? He Yan heard this and stood up. Lin Shuanghe supported Xiao Ju to the side of the bed and smiled at He Yan. He Mimi. Sister-in-law, Huijin drank too much today. I helped him back. Why did he drink so much? Qing Mei complained. How can this? She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and looked at her young lady with hidden bitterness. After staying with He Yan for a long time, she also learned to speak without thinking. He Yan turned to look at Xiao Ju. He was supported by Lin Shuanghe to sit on the side of the bed. His head was leaning against the headboard and his eyes were closed. He looked fine and didn't seem to be in pain, but it seemed like he couldn't handle the alcohol. Xiao Ju can get drunk, she said thoughtfully. Everyone wants to drink with him. How can he not get drunk? Lin Shuanghe sighed. Speaking of which, Huijin's marriage is a big deal. Those martial artists can all drink. He's still all right. Go outside and look at the hall. He's lying on the floor and vomiting. Especially Yan He. He seemed to be speechless. He kept asking Huijin to drink with him. Isn't it because he wants to see who can drink more? Why is his desire to win so strong? Yan He won. How can that be? Lin Shuanghe smiled. He was carried back. Yan, anyway, I've sent him back. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. I'll retire after I've succeeded. He Mimi, remember to take good care of Huijin. He smiled. Good nights are short. Don't waste them. Yan, wait. Before she could finish, Lin Shuanghe had already walked away. Miss. Qing Mei said softly, then this servant will also leave. Why are you leaving? Yan shouted, give me a hand. This. I'm afraid it's a bit inconvenient. Qing Mei looked as if she was facing a great enemy. She waved her hands. Besides, this servant isn't very strong. I heard that when Miss was in the Liang Province Guards, you could lift a huge rock by yourself. I think you can take good care of Military Governor Xiao by yourself. She walked towards the door and said, then, this servant will also leave. Hey! This servant was sometimes timid, but sometimes she was quite good at arguing. Yan sighed. This time, only Xiao Ju and her were left in the room. She turned to look at Xiao Ju. When this person was drunk, she was very quiet. She didn't act crazy or speak nonsense. She just leaned against the headboard as if she was taking a nap. Yan walked over and nudged her, Xiao Ju. There was no reaction. She waved her hand in front of Xiao Ju's face. Xiao Ju still had her eyes closed. Yan sighed in relief. She thought that Xiao Ju was indeed drunk. Alright, she had gotten drunk in front of Xiao Ju before. Xiao Ju had also gotten drunk in front of her. It was fair to each of them once. Yan sat down beside her and leaned forward to look. When Xiao Ju's eyes were closed, her eyelashes obediently drooped down like the wings of a butterfly. Yan's heart itched and she couldn't help but reach out to touch her. The young man frowned slightly. She quickly retracted her hand, thinking that Xiao Ju had woken up. After a while, she saw that Xiao Ju didn't respond. She gradually became bolder. Yan had never denied Xiao Ju's beauty. When he was in the Xianchang Hall, he was too lazy to pay attention to anyone. However, he still attracted a lot of attention. Later, when he became the commander of the right military, even though he was rumored to be ruthless, he still didn't drop out of the top 3 of the dream man of Shuajing. It was all because of his face. Yan sat closer and stared at him. TSK, TSK, TSK. She sighed and said, elegant and refined. Just by looking at this person's face, she couldn't tell that he spent every day on the battlefield. How could his face not be haggard at all? His skin was like jade, his facial features were handsome, and his jawline was extremely beautiful. Just looking at him would give birth to evil thoughts. He Yen sighed. When the heavens created Xiaoju, they must have put a lot of thought into it. Perhaps this was the life that others envied but couldn't get. He Yen looked at the man leaning against the wall, and her guts grew. She shouted, "Such a beautiful person, and now she's in my hands. This is a rare opportunity in 100 years. If I don't do whatever I want, I'll be sorry for myself." As she spoke, she undid Xiaoju's buttons. There were many layers of wedding clothes, and the room was stuffy. She also saw that Xiaoju's face was slightly red, and thought that it was because of the heat. Out of kindness, she planned to help take off Xiaoju's outer clothes and put him on the bed so that they could rest early today. She didn't expect the buttons to be so complicated. She lowered her head and unbuttoned one. Just as she was about to unbutton the second one, her hand was suddenly grabbed. He Yen looked up in surprise and met a pair of deep black eyes. His voice was faint and seemed to be teasing her. "Then, how do you plan to do whatever you want to me?" This person's eyes were clear and sober. He Yen cried out, "You're not drunk?" Xiaoju curled her lips. "A little." "Like hell I'll believe you." He Yen thought in his heart. He was clearly awake from the beginning to the end. Fortunately, he didn't do anything more excessive just now. He Yen smiled and said, "Then it's good that you're awake, tell me." He Yen didn't plan to let He Yen off. He was still holding onto the hand that was on Xiaoju's chest. He stared at He Yen with a faint smile. "How do you want to do whatever you want?" He Yen tried to break free from his hand but couldn't. She was inexplicably flustered and stuttered, I saw that you were wearing too much and the room was too hot, so I helped you undo 2 buttons. You're lying." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows and stared at her. "I think you're trying to take advantage of me." He Yen was speechless. "That can't be. How can unbuttoning be taken advantage of?" The hand that was placed on Xiaoju's chest felt as if it was touching a piece of soldering iron. Xiaoju was the first to burn. He Yen was dizzy and said, No, how can this be called taking advantage of others? What haven't I seen before? I've even seen the red mole on your waist." As soon as she said this, Xiaoju's body stiffened. After a while, he said faintly, "You're quite magnanimous." He Yen regained her senses and scolded herself in her heart. Half of her body was on Xiaoju's body. Her hand was being held by him and she was touching his collar. She looked like a female hooligan who wanted to take him by force. However, Xiaoju didn't let go. She could only remain frozen like this. "Xiaoju, let go of me first. Let's talk things over." She held back for a while and finally managed to say this. Xiaoju glanced at her and suddenly let go. He Yen heaved a huge sigh of relief. She thought to herself, is this heater a sun in the room? Why is it so hot that she's panicking and short of breath? Xiaoju's gaze fell on a corner of a book that was peeking out from under the blanket. She was startled and reached out to take it. "What's this?" He Yen looked up and saw what she was doing. Her expression changed immediately. "Wait." Her words were useless. Xiaoju was already in her hands. He Yen instinctively pounced on her and tried to snatch it away. That was the booklet that Qing Mei had given to her. He Yen didn't have time to keep it properly when Lin Shuanghe came in. She casually stuffed it under the blanket. She didn't expect that Xiaoju would see it. He Yen still remembered clearly how Xiaoju's face darkened when he saw her looking at the erotic pictures in Jiang City. It was such a joyous occasion. She didn't want to make this young master angry again. He Yen reached out to grab it, but was blocked by Xiaoju's arm. She reached out again, but her hand was dodged again. Dodging and dodging, one advancing and one retreating, Xiaoju's hands were long and held the booklet to prevent He Yen from touching it. He Yen had no choice but to jump up and pounce. She was caught off guard and tripped over the edge of the bed, falling straight down. Seeing this, Xiaoju pulled her forward and the two fell straight down. The bed made an earth-shattering sound. He Yan turned her head to look. Fortunately, it didn't collapse. It was very sturdy. She looked at the booklet that she had grabbed and let out a sigh of relief. The next moment, she heard a commotion outside. It was Qing Li Su's voice. Wow! What a big commotion! My uncle is really amazing. Then, she heard Qi Wu's voice. Who let young Master Qing in? Hurry up and take him out. I don't want to. I want to stay a little longer. Let me go. It seemed that someone had taken Qing Li Su away. Outside the door, silence gradually returned. He Yan was stunned for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she was lying on Xiaoju's body. She was still holding the booklet tightly in her hand. Her head was pressed against Xiaoju's chest. She could feel his chest vibrating slightly. It seemed like he was laughing. He was laughing. He Yan suddenly propped up half of her body and looked at Xiaoju. He looked up and lazily said, "General, he is amazing." That's natural. He Yan was a little dazed. I'm no longer the last place in the Xianchang Gymnasium. Yes. In his deep black eyes, there seemed to be a faint smile. He put his hands behind his head. General, he is a hero among women. You are invincible. I admit defeat. Your words are not sincere. He Yan pretended to be fierce. Since I won, shouldn't I be rewarded? Xiaoju raised her voice slightly. What reward do you want? He Yan was thinking. Suddenly, she felt the world spin. She and Xiaoju had switched positions. She was at the bottom and Xiaoju was at the top. This person's eyes were like a beautiful dream in the window. The strong scent of wine and the scent of moon qilin mixed together. It was intoxicating. How about this reward? Her belt was slowly taken out. He Yan's nervous voice trembled. Her fingers touched the trophy that she had just snatched. She asked, Xiaoju, do you want to take a look first? No need. Someone chuckled. The curtain slid down and covered the beautiful night in the tent. General, he may not know, but men are self-taught when it comes to these things. The moon is silver, the stars are like rain, the red candle tears end, and the spring wind blows. Chapter 249. The sun shone in through the window. The red candle on the table had burned out, leaving only a little bit of red fire oil, like a blooming flower. A hand reached out from behind the curtain. He Yan rubbed his eyes and sat up with his hands on his waist. This was a muddle-headed night, and also, a night of fighting for the Red Cliffs. If she wanted to recall, forget it, it was better not to recall. She only thought that the phrase, do whatever you want, was used on her in the end. Did she get any rewards? No. From the looks of it, the biggest winner was clearly Xiaoju. He Yan turned her head to look at her side, but it was empty. There was no one there. She was stunned for a moment, then looked outside. She was afraid that it was already too late. After bathing last night, she was so tired that she fell asleep immediately. Looking at the sun now, she estimated that it was not early. Just as she was thinking, the door opened and someone walked in. He Yan raised his head and saw Xiaoju walk in. Bai Guo followed behind with a food basket in her hands. She entered the room and placed the bowls and plates in the basket on the table one by one. You're awake. Xiaoju saw that she had sat up and walked over to ask. He Yan coughed and nodded. After washing up, we can eat. He paused and asked hesitantly, are you okay? He Yan's face turned red and subconsciously looked at Bai Guo. Bai Guo had already put down the food and ran away. She looked at the person in front of her. This person looked like he had taken yin to nourish yang. After a night, he looked refreshed and did not have any discomfort. She gritted her teeth and said, very good. Military Governor Zhao's martial arts are very good and there are few opponents. I have learned a lot. Xiao Ju's mouth curved and said slowly, General, he is not bad. Last night, you said that you will fight 800 rounds in the future, He Yan, ? What kind of words were these? When did she say that? He Yan hurriedly covered his mouth. Wait. Don't talk nonsense. General, He leaned closer, a smile hidden in his dark eyes. It's only been one night. Are you going back on your word? He Yan lifted the blanket, put on his shoes, and ran away. He mumbled. I'm going to wash up. Where's Qing Mei? Qing Mei was called in. After He Yan rinsed her mouth and washed her face, Qing Mei came to help her comb her hair. As she combed her hair, she said, Miss. Oh, I should call you young madam now. Young madam, young master is really good to you. He Yan replied absent-mindedly, Oh. I woke up early this morning, Qing Mei said. I went to the kitchen and instructed the servants to prepare a meal for you. This servant originally wanted to wake you up, but young master didn't allow it. He said that you should sleep a little longer. He Yan nodded. When he looked up, he saw that Qing Mei was grinning from ear to ear. Puzzled, he asked, Why are you so happy? Second young master is good to young madam. Of course, this servant is happy. Qing Mei looked as if she had picked up money. This servant will tell master and young master later that they can rest assured. He Yan, after she washed up, she changed into a begonia red dress with narrow sleeves. Qing Mei combed her hair neatly. When she combed her hair into a bun, it didn't make her look old. Instead, it made her look cleaner and fresher. He Yan tied the snake-patterned black jade pendant that Xiao Ju had given to her around her waist. Then, she walked into the small hall. The table was already filled with the food that Bai Guo had brought over. When the two of them were eating, they didn't like others to wait on them. Thus, Qing Mei left. He Yan sat at the table and gave Xiao Ju a pair of chopsticks. He sighed and said, Xiao Ju, your family's breakfast is a little too sumptuous. It was all her favorite food, even though she wasn't a picky eater. Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. You're bought over with just one meal. Then you don't understand. He Yan said with conviction. Us ordinary people don't care about pretentiousness. When you get married, what you wear and what you eat is very important. He laughed. You're easy to feed. He Yan grabbed a plum blossom bun and smiled at her as he ate. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression changed. Oh no, aren't we supposed to serve tea to eldest brother and sister-in-law this morning? Originally, it was the bride's turn to serve tea to her parents-in-law. However, Xiao Zhongwu and his wife were no longer alive. Logically, they should serve tea to Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei. It's okay. I've already told them that we'll go after eating. He Yan looked at her. Isn't this against the rules? What rules? This person said casually. Xiao family doesn't have any rules. You can do whatever you want. He Yan was startled. Not to mention when she was in the He family, when she married into the Su family, before she went blind, she had to follow the rules every morning and night. Because she was a woman for a short time and then spent many years in the army, there were many rules that she wasn't clear about. She often made a fool of herself. At that time, whenever she thought of the word rules, she would have a headache. Now, someone was telling her to do whatever she wanted. She sneaked a glance at the person opposite her. Xiao Ju noticed her gaze and asked, What's wrong? Xiao Ju, He Yan said seriously, in the Shuo capital, you're the first husband. You're really considerate of everything. Xiao Ju's lips curled up. She said calmly, Of course. After all, your husband fell in love with you at first sight during the Lantern Festival. The next day, he came to propose marriage. If you didn't agree to marry him, he would jump into the river and kill himself. He Yan. He continued to say casually, our General He's skills in commanding troops have reached perfection. She's also very good at controlling her husband. He Yen thought that it sounded familiar. Only then did he remember that she had casually spouted nonsense to Ling Xiao and the other girls when they were in Jiang. She didn't expect Xiao Ju to remember it. At that time, she was talking nonsense. She didn't expect that Xiao Ju would really become her husband. But now, it sounded a little shameless. He Yen picked up the sweet syrup and pretended to take a sip. She changed the topic, that Xiao family really doesn't have rules. You can do whatever you want. Xiao Ju glanced at her, you can't cheat. You can't meet a man at night. He Yen, she asked fearlessly, then what will happen if I break these 2 rules? Xiao Ju narrowed her eyes and said calmly, break her legs and lock her up. He Yen, after a while, she said, Xiao Ju, you're so fierce. She looked at her with a warning look, that's right. After breakfast, He Yen and Xiao Ju went to serve tea. He Yen had lived in the Xiao mansion for a while, so he wasn't unfamiliar with Xiao Jing and his wife. After drinking the tea, Bai Rongwei took out a small box and handed it to He Yen. She smiled and said, this was prepared by me and his brother before Huijin got married. Today, we can finally give it away. He Yen smiled and thanked her. Bai Rongwei looked at the 2 of them again. The more she looked at them, the happier she felt. After Xiao Ju was betrothed by Emperor Wen Xian, Bai Rongwei heard a lot of people talking behind her back about how the second son of the Xiao family married a vulgar martial artist. Bai Rongwei was unhappy when she heard this. Later, when there were invitations, she would say that she wasn't feeling well and wouldn't go. Now that the 2 of them were walking together, they looked like a pair of jade. Moreover, who said that women should be gentle and polite? She saw that He Yen was lively and Xiao Ju's expression had become more lively these days. He Yen talked for a while until Xiao Jing told her that it was time to rest. After Bai Rongwei became pregnant, Xiao Jing didn't dare to be careless. He Yen took the box and Xiao Ju out of the door and walked towards her courtyard. Halfway there, she couldn't help but open the box a little. She looked inside and saw that there were 3 hairbrushes made of white jade. From big to small, they were exquisite. Hairbrushes. She was startled. Xiao Ju looked at her sideways. You don't like them? No. He Yen closed the box and hugged it. I like them very much. They were more precious than gold, jade, or precious stones. Because of the wedding, Emperor Wen Xian allowed Xiao Ju to stay in the Fu for 1 more day. She didn't have anything to do today. He Yen and Bai Gua had just walked back to the courtyard when they saw Qing Mei and Bai Gua squatting on the ground. In front of them was a small mountain of congratulatory gifts tied with red silk. Young mistress is here. Bai Gua smiled and stood up. We are taking out the congratulatory gifts we received yesterday. Young mistress, do you want to take a look? He Yen saw that the congratulatory gifts almost filled half of the courtyard. He couldn't help but ask Xiao Ju, didn't they say that you are unapproachable and don't have good relations with people in the capital? How did you get so many congratulatory gifts? How many people came yesterday? Xiao Ju didn't say anything. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She looked proud. I'll go take a look first to see what good things there are. He Yen said and walked to Qing Mei's side. Originally, when he made He Rufei, the emperor gave him a lot of gifts. However, he didn't get to enjoy them before they were carried to the He family's storeroom. After that, he made Lady He. His family was poor. He hadn't seen the joy of sitting on a mountain of gold in a long time. Qing Mei was also very excited. It was probably her first time seeing so many good things. She couldn't help but share her discoveries with He Yen. Young mistress, look at this. This flower pot is made of colored glass. This ginseng looks very expensive. And this vase. This is the first time I've seen this kind of vase. Is this precious stone real? The little girl chattered non-stop. He Yen followed her and rummaged a few times. Unexpectedly, she found something sent by an acquaintance. It was a gift from Mu Hongjin and Cui Yuji from Jiang City. It was a whole set of pearls. Jiang was close to the water and was rich in pearls. The pearls were plump and bright. As soon as the box was opened, it almost dazzled people's eyes. Cui Yuji was rich and imposing, and Mu Hongjin was overbearing and generous. It was indeed very fitting for them to send such a valuable gift. However, He Yen felt that she probably wouldn't wear this set of pearls in her lifetime. If she wore it outside, it would be like openly putting banknotes on her head. Wouldn't it attract people to snatch it? It was really eye-catching. She continued rummaging and found a small jar of wine. It was a gift from Jinling City's Hua Yuxian and Kai Lian. It was the Bifang wine that they had tasted before. However, this jar of Bifang wine was a vintage wine. It had been stored for 7 years. If it wasn't for Xiao Ju and He Yan's great joy, Hua Yuxian wouldn't have been willing to take it out. He Yan put this small jar of Bifang wine beside him. He heard Qing Mei say, "Young mistress, look at this." He Yan turned to look and was stunned for a moment. This was an extremely long embroidery. The whole embroidery was about half a person's height. It was embroidered with a pair of lotus flowers on a stalk and a pair of mandarin ducks. The embroidery was particularly uniform, and the color was gorgeous and bright. It was definitely not an easy task to embroider such an embroidery. Even if many embroiderers worked day and night, it would take them more than a month to barely complete it. There was a letter beside the embroidery scroll. He Yen opened the letter. It turned out that this embroidery was sent from the Rundu. The embroiderers who embroidered this pair of mandarin ducks were the women who were captured by He Yen from Li Kuang's subordinates. The Rundu had just fought a war not long ago, and the city was desolate. It was the Rundu's county magistrate, Zhao Shiming, who found silk thread and asked those women to sew this embroidery as a wedding gift for Xiao Ju and He Yen. It seemed that those women were living a good life. He Yen was also happy for them. He kept the letter and asked Qing Mei to move the embroidery she had specially picked into his room. Then, he stood up and walked to Xiao Ju's side. Xiao Ju waited for him to come closer and raised her eyebrows slightly. "Are you satisfied?" He Yen shook his head. "What's not satisfied?" "Military Governor Xiao, everyone gives a wedding gift. Why don't you give me one?" He Yen said deliberately. She was just joking, but Xiao Ju said calmly, "How do you know that I don't have a wedding gift?" He Yen was stunned for a moment and asked tentatively, "Don't tell me you really prepared a wedding gift?" Xiao Ju crossed her arms and looked at him. He Yen was stunned. "Didn't you already give me a betrothal gift? You even gave me your family heirloom, black jade. If that's not enough, what else do you want to give me?" Her heart was a little flustered. Could it be that in this lifetime, this title of femme fatale was really going to be worn on her head and couldn't be removed? God, she didn't do anything. Xiao Ju pursed her lips and walked to the other side. He Yen hurriedly followed. "Xiao Ju, what exactly do you want to give me?" As they walked, something suddenly blocked their path. He Yen looked down and saw a yellow dog biting the flower bead on her shoe. Mao. He Yen had temporarily entrusted Mao, who had escaped, to Xiao Ju after investigating the He residence the night before. He didn't expect that Mao, who had only stayed in the Xiao family for a short period of time, had already become rounder. The tuft of hair on its head had been tied into a chirp by someone with a red string, which was particularly festive. It was so different from before that He Yen almost didn't recognize it. Mao saw He Yen looking down at him and barked at her excitedly. Unfortunately, there was no sound. He pounced on the courtyard and rolled around, biting his tail as he turned around. He Yen was speechless for a moment. This dog really didn't treat him as an outsider. He had gotten used to it so quickly. However, it was clear that he was very satisfied with his life here. He thought that it wouldn't be long before he could be comparable to the pig named Tang Yuan. I've found the new house where your father and brother are living. Xiao Zhu's voice came from beside him. He Yan turned around. Didn't Lin Shuanghe say that it would take a few more days? He's very busy, how could he have time to help you? Xiao Zhu said calmly, I've already asked someone to help move. They should be able to move in 2 days. So fast. Where is it? It's 1 street away from the Xiao family. He Yan grabbed her sleeve. Wait, you said 1 street away from the Xiao family? Xiao Zhu looked down at her. You don't like it? It's not that I don't like it, it's just. He Yan's mind was in a mess. It's close to the Xiao family. You can go back any time in the future. If Dad and Yunsheng want to visit you, it's also very convenient. Xiao Zhu frowned. You don't seem to be satisfied. He Yan looked at her and did not say anything. A married girl would be gossiped about if she went back to her mother's house every few days. In her previous life, when she married into the Su family, from the time she was married until she drowned, she had only returned once to visit her parents. However, she didn't have any reason to go back in her previous life. He Yan did not expect that Xiao Zhu would buy the house directly opposite the Xiao family. If this were to spread, he didn't know what people would say about him. For example, those gossiping idlers might push all the blame onto He Yan. The title of a bride who didn't know the rules and betrayed the orthodoxy would most likely fall on her. However, He Yan wasn't angry at all. He was even happy. If you don't like it, I like it very much. She said crisply. You don't seem to think so. Xiao Zhu looked at her suspiciously. He Yan grabbed his sleeve and held his arm. Xiao Zhu, I'm so touched. You've taken care of my father, my brother, and even my dog so well. Could it be that God saw how miserable I was in my previous life and sent you to me in this life? Xiao Zhu was speechless for a while. Then, she said, so taking care of your dog will make you feel touched. You can't say that. He Yan looked at Mao who was playing in the yard. Her heart was filled with emotions. But I didn't expect you to be such a nice person. There were many rumors in the world that could not be trusted. The so-called heartless, cruel, and merciless were all false rumors. In her previous life, she was a careful wife. Others told her that she had to be filial to her daughter, virtuous as a wife, and a mother. She had to be quiet and chaste. She had to be disciplined. She had to be shameless. She had to be gentle. She had to be tolerant. She had to be respectful. She had to be virtuous. She didn't know who was the first person to put these shackles on a woman. But it seemed that these virtues had been passed down for thousands of years. Everyone took it for granted. Everyone was like this. But Xiao Zhu had broken these shackles from the beginning. She didn't know that being a wife could be like this. She was free and carefree. Xiao Zhu's posture was tall and straight. Hearing this, his other hand pulled down He Yan's hand that was holding his and then covered it with his own palm. The moment their fingers interlocked, it was as if a small snowflake had landed on his heart. It flew past quickly, leaving behind a slight itch. You don't have to be touched, he said calmly. After all, when you are unhappy, your husband will use his skills to make you happy. He Yan, he can't accept anyone else. He only loves you. He Yan, this time, she was sure that Xiao Zhu was indeed the number one in the Xianchang mansion. She had only said it once in Jiang. She had forgotten it herself. But Xiao Zhu still remembered it word for word. She held Xiao Zhu's hand. It was as if she wanted to hold his hand until the end of time. She smiled and replied, that can't be helped. A strong woman is afraid of a persistent man. Chapter 250. The new year in Shuo capital was a double blessing for the Xiao family, but for some families, it was like adding fuel to the fire. In the crown prince's residence, the Guang Yan sat in his study, his face full of anxiety. After Su Jingfu fell, although a portion of the Su faction went to Chu Zhao, Emperor Wenxuan's revenge was fierce and had lost many of his men. All these years, he did not have much ability and relied on Empress Zhang's family and Prime Minister Su's connections to stabilize his position as the crown prince. Although it was his own decision to abandon the rook to save the king, after making the decision, the Guang Yan regretted it. In these days, the Guang Yan appeared in front of Emperor Wenxuan very frequently and started to interfere with the matters of the court. Empress Zhang told him not to act rashly at this time. He had been close to Su Jingfu in the past, and Emperor Wenxuan probably did not like him. Before the limelight passed, it was best to stay in the residence and not do anything. The Guang Yan agreed, but he was even more anxious inside. If his fourth son took advantage of his absence to say sweet words in front of Emperor Wenxuan, who knew what would happen in the future? Now that Xiao Huaijin's power was growing, how could he fall behind at this time? Just as he was thinking, a servant came in and reported, "Your Highness, someone wants to see you." The Guang Yan said, "Come in." The person was wearing servant clothes and did not look very eye-catching, but when he raised his head, one could see that his appearance was slightly different from Wei Ren's. This was a Yuto. "Your Highness, this servant is here on Lord Meningbu's orders to pass a message to your Highness." Meningbu? The Guang Yan narrowed his eyes and asked the others in the hall to leave. Then he looked at this person, "Your envoy is still alive?" After the Heavenly Star platform, Emperor Wenxuan had ordered people to put all the envoys from Yudo under house arrest. Until now, he had not said what to do. The Guang Yan had tried to get someone to send a message to Meningbu, but it was too tightly guarded and they never found a chance. He did not expect Meningbu's men to come knocking on his door. As if afraid that the Guang Yan would not believe him, the servant stepped forward and showed the Guang Yan the seal in his sleeve. "If you want me to save your lord, then go back," the Guang Yan said impatiently. Imperial father is still angry, this consort doesn't want to add fuel to the fire. "Your Highness, you haven't been to court recently, so I'm afraid you don't know. The fourth prince has been very favored by His Majesty recently, and the courtiers in the court also want to support him." It would have been better if he hadn't said that. Once he said that, Guang Yan's expression turned ugly. He sneered and said, "How could I not know? Concubine Lan attends to him every day," the servant said in a low voice. "Sir Meningbu asked me to ask His Highness if he's just going to sit and wait for death." The crown prince slammed the teacup in front of him against the wall with a bang. "Shut up!" He was furious. Emperor Wenxuan favored the concubine Lan more than just a day or two. The Guang Yan knew that if he was not the eldest son, if Emperor Wenxuan did not have to worry about public opinion, he would have already made the Guang Yan the crown prince. It was all because the Guang Yan was concubine Lan's son, that bitch. Indecisiveness will only lead to trouble, Your Highness. The Guang Yan looked at the servant. "What do you mean?" The servant lowered his head humbly. "Sir Meningbu asked me to tell Your Highness that His Majesty is old, and the fourth prince is ready to make a move. If this did not happen, the position of Emperor De Wei would have already been in Your Highness's pocket. Now that Prime Minister Su has fallen, and Xiao Huaijin's wings have grown, if Xiao Huaijin seeks refuge with the fourth prince." The Guang Yan's heart skipped a beat. This was what he was most worried about. In the past, Xiao Zhongwu did not like him and often caused trouble for him. Now that Xiao Zhongwu was finally dead, his son appeared. But now, Xiao Huaijin was even more terrifying than Xiao Zhongwu. Su Jingfu had not been able to eliminate Xiao Huaijin, and now he had nurtured such a disaster. "Your Highness, why don't you cut the Gordian knot?" "Impudent!" The Guang Yan blurted out. He was both shocked and angry. "You dare to speak nonsense in front of me? Your Highness, please spare my life." The servant bowed. Those who achieve great things do not care about trifles. Being kind to others is being cruel to yourself. Otherwise, with Your Highness' benevolence, I'm afraid the fourth prince will take advantage of this loophole. But now, the servant's voice seemed to be bewitching, "If Your Majesty's imperial carriage arrives, you will be the rightful son of heaven." The rightful son of heaven. The Guang Yan, shut up. It was as if a demon's box of bewitchment had been opened. Thoughts that had not been moved before were now uncontrollably floated to the surface of his mind. He understood what Meningbu meant, but although he had secretly fought with the Guangxua in the past, he had never thought of killing his father. Although Emperor Wenxuan favored the Guangxua, he treated him well. Although in the previous dynasty, there were many cases of father and son killing each other, but the Guangyan felt that he did not have to go to this extent. Emperor Wenxuan did not have many children, and the Dewei had always valued rules. When the time came, Emperor Wenxuan would naturally pass the throne to him. Empress Xiang and the Guangyan both thought so. But year after year, day after day, this wait seemed to be endless. Emperor Wenxuan seemed to be deliberately avoiding something. After waiting for so long, not only did he not receive the imperial edict, but he also waited for the gradual rise of the Guangxua. In the past few years, wasn't he secretly communicating with the Yuto because he was becoming less and less confident? If Emperor Wenxuan had done what he was supposed to do, he would not be in this situation. Until now, he had been restricted in many ways. In this battle for the throne, he had unknowingly fallen from being the victor to being at a disadvantage. If he allowed the Guangxua to continue like this, his heart was fiercely stirred by evil thoughts. He might as well go all the way. The servant kneeling on the ground saw the changes in the crown prince's expression. He kindly advised, "Your Highness, this servant has already conveyed His Excellency's message. Your Highness should consider it carefully. As long as you can sit in that position, everything you do now will be worth it." Since ancient times, which one of those who achieved great things did not shed blood on the road? Your Highness, please reconsider. The Guangyan was provoked by his words and became impatient. He reprimanded, "All right, this prince knows. Get out." Just like when he came, the servant quietly left. The Guangyan looked at the broken pieces of the teacup on the ground. A trace of haze gradually crept into his eyes. After a while, he seemed to have been awakened and hurriedly left the hall. After the Guangyan left, the servants of the crown prince's residence came in to clean up the debris on the ground. A beautiful servant walked out from the back of the hall and smiled gently, "Let me do it." Missing Xiang. The servant did not dare to fight with her. Everyone knew that the most favored servant in the crown prince's residence was this servant called Ing Xiang. The crown prince had once argued with the crown princess because of her. However, Ing Xiang had a gentle personality and never gave the servants any face. She got along well with the other servants. Ing Xiang half knelt and gently picked up the broken pieces on the ground. Her expression was as gentle as ever. Her long eyelashes drooped down to hide the strange emotions in her eyes. Meningbu's people actually instigated the crown prince to kill the emperor? At this juncture, it was not a good time. The Chu residence at night was excessively quiet. Ever since Prime Minister Su fell from power, the three legitimate sons of the Chu family who were originally afraid of Chu Zhao gradually became arrogant. Chu Zhao did not have Su Jingfu's support. Even though he was still an official in the court, who knew how long that would last? Perhaps one day Emperor Wenxian would blame Chu Zhao for his resentment towards Su Jingfu. No one could say for sure. Madame Chu would occasionally mock and ridicule Chu Zhao when she saw him. As for Chu Linfeng, he almost did not see Chu Zhao anymore. He was a completely different person from the warm concern he had for Chu Zhao before the incident. Chu Zhao himself was not affected by these things. He continued to do what he was supposed to do every day. The wound on his chest had not fully healed yet. As he was recuperating in the residence, he rarely saw his colleagues. He very cleverly avoided this critical time. His trusted aide walked in and took out a letter from his pocket. "Fourth young master, there is news from Missing Xiang again." Chu Zhao took the letter and opened it. He was fine at first, but after reading the letter, his expression changed slightly. A moment later, he threw the letter into the burning stove. His fingers lightly pressed against his forehead as if he had a terrible headache. "Fourth young master?" his trusted aide asked carefully. Chu Zhao waved his hand and did not say a word. He really did not expect the Guang Yan to be so anxious. He also did not expect Ma Ningbu to not forget to sow discord at this juncture. If the Guang Yan had a bit of intelligence, they would not be led by the nose by Yuto. Unfortunately, in these years, just like how Emperor Wen Xian relied on Su Jingfu, the Guang Yan had long been used to letting Su Jingfu take care of everything. Once Su Jingfu fell, he had no idea what to do. Fourth young master, the trusted aide, looked at his expression and thought for a long time. He finally could not help but say, "Fourth young master is very talented." Now that the Prime Minister is no longer here, the Crown Prince is impulsive and reckless. Fourth Prince knows how to conceal his strength and bide his time. The situation in the imperial court is different from the past. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. The Crown Prince is incompetent. Why not follow Fourth Prince? These words were disgraceful, but Chu Zhao had always treated his subordinates well. Therefore, his subordinates were always more daring than other trusted aides. Hearing this, Chu Zhao released his hand and looked at the oil lamp on the table. The flame in the oil lamp was slightly swayed by the cold wind that came in through the window. He said, "If Xiao Huijin was not here, of course I could. But now, even if it was for Xiao Huijin's sake, Fourth Prince would not use me." Even if the remaining remnants of Su Jingfu went to defect, it did not seem to be as important as Xiao Ju. At this juncture, the Guang Yan needed Xiao Huijin's strength. Because Xiao Zhongwu and Su Jingfu were mortal enemies, the Guang Yan would not give up on Xiao Huijin and choose him. "But if we continue on this path to the end," "It's not that I want to continue on this path to the end," Chu Zhao interrupted him. "It's that there has never been a second path for me to take." Perhaps this was destined many years ago, when he first met Su Jingfu and knelt under Su Jingfu's tutelage. "Then Fourth young master, what should we do now?" "I need to go to the Crown Prince's residence." A trace of worry flashed through his brows. Although it seemed that Ma Ningbu's words might have caused the Crown Prince to have other thoughts, his words might not be of any use. But since they were already on the same boat, if something happened to the Crown Prince, he would not be safe either. He could only do his best. In Cunning Palace, Empress Zhang sat quietly on a soft couch, her eyes closed as she listened to the zither player play. The sound of the zither was clear and peaceful, able to soothe the impatience in people's hearts. Ever since Su Jingfu's accident, she often had insomnia at night, and the amount of time she could sleep each day was very little. Once she closed her eyes, her eyelids would often twitch violently, as if indicating that something was about to happen. Emperor Wen Xuan's health was getting worse and worse, and he did not attend court every few days. Lin Qingtan had checked on him several times, and only said that he would be fine after taking good care of his body. But in Empress Zhang's heart, she felt that this was not the case. She was also somewhat anxious. Prime Minister Su's fall was something that no one had expected. Although everyone knew that there would be a battle between Su Jingfu and Xiao Ju. But no one expected that Xiao Ju would use troops on the border battlefield, and use magic in the court. Evidence after evidence nailed the opponent to death on the board. Empress Zhang was not sure whether Su Jingfu's incident would implicate the Guang Yan. Sometimes, Empress Zhang felt that she could see through her husband, Emperor Wen Xuan, but sometimes, she felt that she did not know him at all. Back then, Emperor Wen Xuan was still the crown prince, but he relied on the fact that he was the legitimate son who crawled out of the late empress's womb to obtain the position of crown prince. As the daughter of the prime minister, Empress Zhang had many fantasies about her husband before she married him. But when she became the crown prince's consort, she realized that her husband was just an ordinary man who was obsessed with poetry and singing every day and indulged in pleasure. He had no ambition, no political talent, and no natural domineering aura of the royal family. If his identity was removed, he would be no different from the ordinary men on the street. Empress Zhang was an ambitious woman, but her ambition had always been satisfied too smoothly. Because her husband, who was the emperor, was too mediocre, she did not even have the interest to be jealous in the imperial harem later on. Just like Emperor Wen Xuan's ordinary and stable life, as long as her son, Guang Yan, ascended the throne in the future, she would be the Empress Dowager, falling from one supreme position to another. Empress Xiang had always thought this way, until concubine Lan appeared. Emperor Wenxuan doted on concubine Lan very much. Originally, Empress Xiang did not care about the emperor's favor. There were countless new beauties entering the palace every year, so it was not worthwhile for her to fuss over each one. But Emperor Wenxuan's love for concubine Lan actually contained a bit of sincerity. This was very annoying, especially when concubine Lan also gave birth to a son. Over the years, Empress Xiang had tried to get rid of concubine Lan and her son, but this seemingly docile and uncompetitive woman was exceptionally cunning, and she avoided disaster every time. Guang Yan unexpectedly grew to adulthood safely. If it was not for the tactful Guang Yan, who had been avoiding the crown prince, Empress Xiang would not have let it go. As long as the Guang Yan's position was not shaken, it was fine to let the mother and son live a little longer. That was what she thought, but this delicate balance was instantly broken after Su Jingfu's death. Empress Xiang smelled a trace of danger. The sound of the zither suddenly cut through a note, and a palace maid came in to report, "Empress, His Highness the Crown Prince is here." Empress Xiang opened her eyes, and Guang Yan walked in from outside. "You can all leave." She waved her hand, and the zither player and palace maid retreated. Empress Xiang looked at the approaching Guang Yan, and couldn't help but complain, "Didn't I tell you not to enter the palace during this time to avoid causing trouble? You're good, as if you're afraid that it's not chaotic enough. Why did you come to this empress's place?" Imperial Mother, the Guang Yan looked at her somewhat anxiously, "If you don't let this son enter the palace, how would this son know that the palace is about to sink into the Guang Yan's world?" "What nonsense are you talking about? Who told you?" Empress Xiang sat up slightly, looking nervous. "You don't need to know who told me." The Guang Yan asked, "Is Imperial Father's health not good?" "Imperial Mother, did Imperial Father not reveal any information about the Crown Prince to you?" This son heard that Guang Yan went to Imperial Father's bedside every day to talk to him, who knows what kind of clever words he uses. He said hatefully, "If he coaxes Imperial Father until he's dizzy, then wouldn't my efforts be in vain?" "Shut up!" Empress Xiang shouted harshly. Looking around and seeing that there were no servants around, she let out a sigh of relief and said angrily, "It's fine if you don't watch your mouth, but you don't know how many pairs of eyes in the palace are watching." "Imperial Mother," the Guang Yan said disappointedly, "I think that bitch concubine Lan can't wait to make her move. Why do we still care so much?" When the concubine Lan was mentioned, Empress Zhang's expression became ugly. She had been conceited all her life, boasting that no one in the harem was her match. Even if Emperor Wenxian doted on the concubine Lan, all these years, the concubine Lan still had to behave in front of her with her tail between her legs. But the recent situation had broken her original thinking. That woman wasn't just not fighting, she was scheming for something big. All these years, she had been cautious in front of her. Originally, she was just putting on an act, but when the time came, she showed her true colors. What was laughable was that she had been fooled by her. Seeing the change in Empress Zhang's expression, the Guang Yan licked his lips impatiently and suddenly said, "Imperial Mother, I don't want to wait any longer." Empress Zhang came back to her senses, looked at him and asked, "What do you want to do?" "Now that Su Jingfu is dead, Imperial Father must hate me, plus that bitch concubine Lan said something in front of Imperial Father. If this continues, Imperial Father will definitely make the Guang Yan the crown prince. I can't let this happen." "You want to, as long as Imperial Father is gone now," the Guang Yan's eyes flashed with a trace of madness, "the throne should be mine." Empress Xiang subconsciously covered his mouth, "Do you know what you are saying?" "Of course I know." The Guang Yan said in a low voice, "Imperial Mother, think about it, if Guang Yan becomes the emperor, what will happen to me?" "Imperial Mother, what will happen to you?" "If Imperial Father really cared about me, he would have passed the throne to me long ago. Since he is heartless to me, don't blame me for being heartless. At worst, when I become the emperor in the future, I will burn a few more incense sticks for him every year. Empress Xiang was shocked and angry, but before she could say anything, the Guang Yan's legs went soft, and he knelt in front of her and begged, Imperial Mother, please save this son, help this son to achieve great things. Her expression was uncertain, and she didn't say anything for a while. After a long time, she sighed and said, let me think about it. But from her eyes, it was obvious that she had compromised. Chapter 251. After the end of the year, although it was the beginning of the new year, the snow did not stop. It snowed for an entire night, and the courtyard was covered in a layer of white frost. When He Yan woke up, Xiao Zhu was no longer there. Strangely enough, she wasn't originally a lazy person. When she was living in a shared bunk in Liang province, she was the only one who woke up before the sun rose among all the men in the house. Perhaps it was because Xiao Zhu's bed was especially soft and warm, but she slept soundly at night and woke up later in the morning. Or perhaps it was because Xiao Zhu woke up too early. Anyway, when she woke up, there was no one around her. He Yan rubbed his eyes and sat up. He lifted the blanket and got out of bed. After a simple wash, he put on an outer robe and opened the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a cold light. Xiao Zhu was practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard. This person understood the principle of not practicing for 3 days. Even though he was not in the Liang province guards, he did not stop his daily training. He Yan leaned against the pillar and looked at him. At the same time, he wanted to see where Xiao Zhu's swordsmanship had improved over the years. It was cold in the morning, but Xiao Zhu only wore a layer of cream clothing. When he wore dark clothing, he was cold and collected. When he wore light clothing, he was especially bright and elegant. It reminded people of the beautiful youth who was always ranked first in the Xian Changguan. Xiao family's courtyard was very large. Other than the pomegranate tree outside Xiao Zhu's study window, there was no other vegetation. The empty ground was very suitable for practicing swordsmanship. With a sweep of the sword, the snow in the courtyard was sent flying by the sword qi. The body of the autumn drinking sword was sparkling and translucent. It made people feel as if they were in a painting. He Yan looked and looked, and his own hands began to itch. He walked back into the room and grabbed the green jade hanging on the wall. Ever since she took the green jade from He Rufei, she had cleaned it many times, but she had never used it once. There were really no occasions where she could use it. After all, Shuojing was not a battlefield. She could not draw her sword and fight with others at any time. However, today was just the right day. Since Xiao Zhu was also practicing the sword, he might as well see if the gap between the first place of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall and the last place of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall was still as insurmountable as before. He Yan took off her cloak and took Qing Lang with her. With a chuckle, she walked out of the door. Xiao Zhu's back was facing her. She suddenly pulled out her sword and stabbed towards Xiao Zhu's back. She called out, Xiao Zhu, let me test your sword. The young man abruptly turned his head, and the autumn wine in his hand met with Qing Lang's, producing a crisp sound. Seeing this, Xiao Zhu paused, immediately put away her long sword, and stepped forward to support her. What's wrong? He Yan was half hugged by him. Suddenly, she raised her head and smiled slyly. Xiao Zhu was stunned. The next moment, she slapped her palm. Xiao Zhu reached out to block it, but she was still pushed back a few steps. A wise man should be cut down by his emotions. Using a beauty as the basis for a matter, losing one's will and weakening one's body can turn defeat into victory. The girl held a long sword and said proudly, Military Governor Xiao is not good enough. You can't even see through the beauty trap. Beauty trap? He asked slowly. After a moment, he chuckled and counterattacked with his sword. He Yan raised her sword to block it. The two of them fought for dozens of swordsmanship. Xiao Zhu restrained He Yan's arm with one hand, and He Yan's hand was restrained from behind. This person even had time to tease her in her ear. You call yourself a beauty? You are so confident. A warrior can be killed but not humiliated. He Yen suddenly turned around, pulled out her hand, pressed her sword forward, and then turned around to stab with her sword. The young man's eyes moved slightly. He suddenly put his sword behind his back and stood facing the tip of her sword. He Yen was caught off guard. The sword in He Yan's hand was coming at him fiercely. Seeing that the tip of the sword was about to pierce through his chest, He Yen panicked and forcefully pulled back his sword. However, as the sword moved forward, she was also pulled forward by the sword. There was no way to avoid it, and she fell into Xiao Ju's arms. Xiao Ju was forced to hug her tightly. What are you doing? He Yen said angrily. Xiao Ju replied calmly, if one does not harm oneself, the victim will be real. He lowered his head to look at He Yen and smiled. General, he is not good enough. You can't even see through the beauty trap. The beauty trap? He Yen said angrily, you are the military governor of the right corps. Do you think it is appropriate for you to use the beauty trap? All is fair in war. He Yen said calmly. He Yen sighed. You are too despicable. The man in front of her looked down at her from above. There was a hint of a smile in his dark eyes. He Yen was stunned. When she saw him slowly leaning over, she immediately closed her eyes nervously. In the next moment, she felt a slight vibration from the chest she was hugging. She opened her eyes and saw Xiao Ju staring at her while holding back his laughter. He stopped a centimeter away from her and raised his eyebrows. Beauty trap. He Yen suddenly felt ashamed that she was being scolded for being blinded by her beauty. She turned around and walked away without saying a word. However, Xiao Ju pulled her back and gently kissed her forehead. General, he is amazing. I admit defeat. Qing Mei was speechless. She quickly turned her head and covered her eyes with her hands. She whispered, why did he suddenly? Qi Wu didn't know when he came over and how long he had been watching. He frowned and said, how is this a sword duel? This is clearly flirting. Young master is really. How can he treat Yin Qiu like this? When Qing Mei heard this, she seemed to have just noticed Qi Wu. When she saw Qi Wu, she remembered what He Yen had said to her on New Year's Eve at the He family. She didn't say a word and walked out with her broom. She didn't even look at Qi Wu. Qi Wu was puzzled. He asked Fei Nu, I didn't provoke her, right? What happened to her? Fei Nu was speechless. He patted Qi Wu's shoulder, didn't say anything, and left as well. That morning, a guest came to the crown prince's residence. When Chu Xiao was welcomed into the palace, Ying Xiang was kneeling on the floor and pouring tea for the Guang Yan. When the Guang Yan saw Chu Xiao, he only glanced at him and said, what are you doing here? The Guang Yan didn't dislike Chu Xiao, but he didn't like him either. When Su Jingfu was still alive, it was fine. After Su Jingfu died, the Guang Yan looked at Chu Xiao and all the dislike he had for him came out. However, when it came to what Chu Xiao had done to offend him, it was still fine. After thinking about it, the Guang Yan just didn't like his lowly background and overly handsome appearance. To share your highness' burden. The Guang Yan smiled and said, share my burden. He slowly sat up straight and looked at Chu Xiao. If you go and kill that idiot Guang Shua now, you will share my burden. The Guang Shua had been staying in the palace recently, and the imperial bodyguards never left his side. The Guang Yan's words were spoken in anger. Is your highness anxious? Chu Xiao didn't get angry and asked gently. Chu Xilan. The crown prince waved his sleeve impatiently. Su Jingfu is dead, and now it's his turn to teach me how to do things. Chu Xiao said, this subject only wishes for your highness to be well. Then don't talk nonsense. The crown prince seemed to have expected what he was going to say. He stared at him with a heavy gaze. Don't forget your identity, Chu Xilan. If something really happens to me, you won't be able to escape. Don't think about escaping unscathed. What you need to do now is to assist me, not drag me down. As for those preachings, put them all away. Otherwise, what happened to Su Jingfu today will be your tomorrow. Ying Xiang stood quietly at the side with her head lowered meekly. If one looked closely, one could see her slightly pale fingertips. Go back. The Guang Yan stood up impatiently. Don't hang around in front of me. It's annoying. After a moment of silence, Chu Xiao's expression didn't change. He stood up with a smile and bowed. Then, this subject will take his leave. Wait. The Guang Yan suddenly stopped and looked at Ying Xiang. He said meaningfully, Ying Xiang, send forth young Master Chu off. Ying Xiang's body stiffened, and she replied gently, yes. She walked in front of Chu Xiao and whispered, let's go, fourth young master. The two of them walked out of the hall together. Although it was sunny today, it was still very cold. His foot stepped on the ground, leaving a thin footprint. Did Maninbu's men come again these few days? Chu Xiao asked softly. Yes, Ying Xiang replied. Last night, when the crown prince returned from the palace, those people came again. The two of them walked one after the other, just one step away from each other. From the side, it looked like they were maintaining a polite distance and didn't seem to be very familiar with each other. It seems that the crown prince already has an idea. Chu Xiao sighed. Ying Xiang looked ahead. What does fourth young master plan to do? Chu Xiao said, I'll do my best. This servant heard that fourth young master had seen Miss He once at night. Ying Xiang suddenly changed the topic. You should know that Miss He is now Military Governor Zhao's sweetheart. If fourth young master uses Miss He as bait, you can at least solve the immediate problem and have the capital to make a deal with Military Governor Zhao. Why should fourth young master give up? There's no need. Ying Xiang stopped in her tracks. Chu Xiao saw her like this and turned back to look at her. Fourth young master once told this servant that Miss He would become Military Governor Zhao's weakness. The woman in front of him was gorgeous, but her eyes seemed to be filled with ice. She looked fragile and cold. Her voice was still gentle, but the words she said were as sharp as a sword. But now, young master is wrong. She is not Military Governor Zhao's weakness, but young master's weakness. Chu Xiao looked at her quietly. After a while, he looked forward and said in a gentle voice, Ying Xiang, are you doing well in the crown prince's residence? Ying Xiang was stunned. The coldness that had gathered in her eyes earlier instantly dissipated into smoke. Her expression became somewhat perplexed. After a while, she lowered her head and said, this servant is doing very well. Chu Xiao smiled. If you are doing well, then it's fine. He continued to walk forward. Ying Xiang paused for a moment, then followed him. The carriage stopped in front of the crown prince's residence. Chu Xiao looked back at her. Let's go back. You've been out for too long. I'm afraid His Highness will be dissatisfied. Ying Xiang raised the corners of her mouth and smiled at him. But there was a hint of sadness in her smile. Chu Xiao got up and got into the carriage. The carriage gradually drove away. Ying Xiang didn't go back immediately. She just stood at the door and looked in the direction the carriage gradually disappeared. Only when she couldn't see anything did she slowly turn around and walk inside. There was no one in the hall. The servant who was waiting on her said, Miss Ying Xiang, His Highness wants you to go to the bedchamber. Her body trembled slightly, and her lips turned pale. She paused for a moment, then lifted her skirt and walked towards the bedchamber. As soon as she arrived at the bedchamber, she saw the crown prince leaning against the soft couch. When he saw Ying Xiang come in, the Guang Yan asked playfully, why were you gone for so long? Ying Xiang calmly walked over and smiled. Was it long? It was only half a stick of incense. His Highness shouldn't pick on this servant's faults. She half knelt in front of the Guang Yan and leaned against his knee. The Guang Yan used to love her pitiful and cute appearance when she leaned against his knee. But today, his hand stroked Ing Xiang's hair. His voice was so gentle that it made one's heart palpitate. It was like the calm before the storm. Half a stick of incense's time is enough to do some things. For example, report all the big and small matters in the Crown Prince's residence to Chu Xilan. His Highness. Ing Xiang was stunned. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? The hand that was gently stroking her hair tightened and strangled her throat. Ing Xiang's neck was slender and white. Just looking at it would make people feel tender affection. But now, in this hand, it seemed like it would break in the next moment. It was powerless and sad. Why did Chu Xilan come today? He's not a roundworm in this prince's stomach. How can he know what this prince is thinking? This prince entered the palace yesterday, and today he came in a hurry. Ing Xiang, oh Ing Xiang. The Guang Yan stared at her and said fiercely, this prince underestimated you. Chu Zhao came at such a coincidence. Of course, perhaps because he was too anxious to stop him, he exposed himself. The Guang Yan was a suspicious person in the past. The reason why he didn't suspect Ing Xiang before was because this woman's appearance was very deceptive. She looked no different from any other woman in this residence who desperately tried to win his favor. And because she was sent by Chu Zhao, she had no one to rely on. Therefore, she served him with all her heart. In all fairness, it wasn't without reason that the Guang Yan doted on Ing Xiang. With Ing Xiang's appearance, even if she was sent to the palace, there weren't many people who could compare to her. But now that he found out that she was in the Crown Prince's residence and was secretly passing information to Chu Xilan, this little bit of doting turned into anger and humiliation from being betrayed. Slut! He suddenly let go of his hand and slapped her. The woman in front of him fell to the ground and didn't get up for a long time. This prince said that you were born so beautiful. If this prince asked for you, he would be willing to give you to me. After all these years, he actually didn't touch you. A vulgar smile appeared on Guang Yan's face. This Chu Xilan's ambition is not small. Raising you like this is just raising a tool. When the time comes, she will give you away and sell you as a favor. But Ing Xiang. He slowly squatted down in front of Ing Xiang and pulled on Ing Xiang's hair to force her to look up at him. Did this prince not treat you well? Since you entered this prince's residence, why do you still want to work for him? Did you forget that your current master is this prince, not Chu Xilan? Ing Xiang raised her head to look at him. Her face had a deep red mark from the Guang Yan slap. There was a bit of blood at the corner of her mouth and a bruise on her neck. However, there wasn't a trace of anger or fear in her expression. She was still as gentle as usual. She looked at the Guang Yan affectionately and said in a low voice, this servant is one of His Highness people. It was hard to imagine that such a beautiful and charming woman didn't have the same arrogant, domineering, and willful personality. Instead, she was like a helpless white rabbit, always pitiful and submissive. The Guang Yan let go of her hand and she fell down again. She was kicked in the heart again. Even at this time, you are still pretending in front of this prince. You are loyal and devoted to Chu Xilan and have deep feelings for him. However, it seems that he doesn't treat you as well as you treat him. The Guang Yan stood up and said in a sinister voice, tell me, if this prince kills you, will he avenge you? This servant is one of His Highness people. If I die, I will be one of His Highness ghosts. It has nothing to do with fourth young Master Chu. Ing Xiang replied softly. Well said. The Crown Prince clapped his hands in delight, you have such a glib tongue. You can't blame this prince for spoiling you for so long. However, you slut, you should know. A trace of malice flashed through his eyes, what this prince hates the most in this life is disloyalty. If you want to be an adulterous couple with Chu Xilan, this prince won't stop you. However, you have to pay the price for what you have done. He turned his head to look at Ing Xiang. Ing Xiang raised her head and met his malicious and ruthless gaze. She couldn't help but shiver. This prince won't kill you, but I won't let you have an easy time either. He said. Chapter 252. After the beginning of spring, it no longer snowed in Shuo capital. Instead, it drizzled endlessly, as if there was no end to it. Within the palace, there was no joy of the new year. Emperor Wenxuan's illness was becoming more and more serious, and the expressions of the palace servants were gloomy. Even the spring rain was dyed with a layer of gloominess. The door to the bedchamber was opened, and the fourth prince Guang Shuo walked out from within. These days, he had been visiting Emperor Wenxuan very frequently. Emperor Wenxuan had always doted on this son of his, and the palace servants did not find it strange. Although they did not dare to openly discuss it, the palace servants secretly thought to themselves that although the Guang Yan was the crown prince, it was hard to say who would inherit the throne in the future. In the bedchamber, Emperor Wenxuan lay on the bed, staring at the bright yellow curtains on the dragon bed. In the past few days, he had told concubine Lan not to come here every day. It was not for any other reason, but because he was afraid that outsiders would see it and spread rumors. People's hearts were hard to predict. If it was in the past, it would not be a problem. However, now that he could not even attend court, he was afraid that he would not be able to protect concubine Lan and her son as well as before. Thinking about Guang Shuo, Emperor Wenxuan sighed in his heart. Guang Shuo was extremely good. He had both ability and integrity, and was also filial. Putting everything else aside, if he had a bit more decisiveness and coldness, he would be a rare wise emperor in the way. However, it was because of his kindness and soft-heartedness that Emperor Wenxuan treated him differently. Because this kind of Guang Shuo was more like his own son. Unfortunately, even so, Emperor Wenxuan was unable to change the crown prince at this time and hand the throne to Guang Shuo. Once he did so, the imperial court would definitely be in chaos. Based on the Guang Yan's personality, it was likely that the imperial family's sons would immediately fight each other and blood would be spilled in the main hall. If he was in the prime of his life, he would be able to suppress all of this. However, he was already old. All these years, the courtiers had followed the Guang Shuo, followed the Guang Shuo, followed the Guang Yan, followed the Guang Yan. Everyone had their own thoughts, and he could no longer control them. But, in the end, there had to be a result. Emperor Wenxian was startled when he heard a slight noise coming from the door. He thought it was a palace servant. Then, he heard a Guang Yan's voice, "Father, is he asleep?" It was a Guang Yan. He was carrying a redwood basket in his hand. When he saw Emperor Wenxuan, who was lying on the bed, about to get up, he hurriedly went forward and helped Emperor Wenxuan up. He leaned against the headboard and called out, "Father. Why are you here?" Emperor Wenxuan asked. As soon as he spoke, he was shocked to find that his voice was unusually hoarse. "I heard that father was sick, and I was terrified." The Guang Yan seemed to be a little nervous. "After thinking about it, I decided to come into the imperial palace to see father." "Is father's body healthy?" The Guang Yan had always been domineering and arrogant. This was the first time he had shown such a helpless expression. Emperor Wenxuan looked at him and suddenly sighed. Ever since Su Jingfu's accident, the Guang Yan rarely came to the imperial palace. Of course, Emperor Wenxuan knew that the Guang Yan had been close to Su Jingfu in the past because he was afraid that Su Jingfu would implicate him, so he deliberately avoided the limelight. Emperor Wenxuan was also angry with the Guang Yan. It was also because of his relationship with Su Jingfu that he particularly hated him. However, the Guang Yan was his son, and he did not have many sons. Therefore, this was the reason why the Guang Yan was still safe and sound until now. It was because the Supreme Court had received Emperor Wenxuan's verbal order to bypass the Crown Prince and the Guang Yan in all cases related to Su Jingfu. Seeing that Emperor Wenxuan was staring at him, he did not know what he was thinking. The Guang Yan was a little uneasy. He subconsciously opened the redwood basket and took out a small bowl of soup. "Imperial Father, this is the ginseng soup that I ordered from the imperial kitchen." The Guang Yan said anxiously, "Imperial Father, please drink some." Emperor Wenxuan looked at him. For some reason, he suddenly remembered that when the Guang Yan was young, before the Guang Shui was born, he only had one eldest son, the Guang Yan, and he had sincerely cherished him. At that time, the Guang Yan was only 4 years old. He was not as cruel and ruthless as he was now. He was still a small child. Empress Zhang gave the Guang Yan a bowl of sweet soup. The Guang Yan could not bear to eat it. He carried the bowl all the way from Cunning Palace to the imperial study. The wet nurse who chased after him knelt down in fear and begged for mercy. Emperor Wenxuan held the Guang Yan on his knees and asked with a smile, "Why did you bring this bowl to me?" "Imperial father," the child could not speak clearly. He struggled to raise the bowl to his mouth. "This is delicious." "Imperial father, please drink some." When Emperor Wenxuan heard this, he laughed heartily. "You are so young, but you still think about me. I did not dote on you for nothing." Emperor Wenxuan had already forgotten the taste of that bowl of sweet soup. The laughter seemed to have come from yesterday, but in the blink of an eye, the Guang Yan had already grown up. He was no longer the child who would hold a bowl to his knees and act coquettishly. He was also at a loss. After so many years, what exactly did he do wrong to cause the situation today? Emperor Wenxuan took a deep breath and asked, "Guang Yan, do you have anything to say about Su Jingfu?" Because of this bowl of ginseng soup, his heart had softened. He still wanted to give the Guang Yan a chance. The Guang Yan's heart skipped a beat. He did not know why Emperor Wenxuan suddenly asked this question. He only said, "I did not expect that as the Prime Minister, Su Jingfu would collude with the enemy and betray the country." After so many years, Imperial Father trusted him very much. He actually had the heart to rebel. This crime should be punished. Emperor Wenxuan saw the evasive look in his eyes and sighed slightly. He shook his head and said, "When I was young, I read that a scholar is in charge of governing an official. Like a hunter controlling an eagle, he takes the eagle to its back and controls it when it is hungry and full. Do not let it be full, and do not let it be hungry. When it is hungry, it does not have enough strength. When it is full, it flies." In the imperial court, old officials like Su Jingfu are like an eagle with a full belly. They are thick-skinned and shameless. They do not eat without doing anything, and they are content with riches and honor. I do not like them when I reward them, and I do not fear when I punish them. I must not use them for the Dewey. The Guang Yan listened absent-mindedly. His gaze fell on the bowl of ginseng soup. He said, "This son will follow Imperial Father's teachings. That Su Jingfu is really hateful. This son was deceived by him. It is also this son's fault. If I had discovered Su Jingfu's disloyal heart earlier, I would not have let those Yudo succeed." Emperor Wenxuan looked at him deeply. "Guang Yan, it is better to correct yourself than to commit a crime." At this moment, the emperor's eyes, which were originally cloudy, were exceptionally clear. It was as if he could see through people's souls. The Guang Yan suddenly lowered his head. He picked up the bowl of ginseng soup and brought it to Emperor Wenxuan. He smiled and said, "Imperial Father, you must be tired after talking so much. The ginseng soup will turn cold if you don't drink it. Let's finish the soup first." Emperor Wenxuan saw his earnest expression. He was not as frivolous as he used to be. He thought that the incident with Su Jingfu had finally made the Guang Yan improve a little. Emperor Wenxuan nodded. The Guang Yan sat beside Emperor Wenxuan. He picked up the bowl, scooped up some soup with a silver spoon, and brought it to Emperor Wenxuan's mouth. Emperor Wenxuan was stunned. "Aren't you going to test the soup?" "Test the soup?" The Guang Yan looked at him. "Perhaps you haven't served me soup for a long time. You don't even know the rules of testing soup." Although Emperor Wenxuan said this, his tone was still tolerant. "Lao Si comes to deliver soup every day. You have to test it first." The Guang Yan panicked for a moment. It was true that he had not served Emperor Wenxuan for a long time. Therefore, he did not know that Emperor Wenxuan would still remember to test for poison when he was so ill. He also did not expect that even the food delivered by the Guang Yan would not be trusted by Emperor Wenxuan. But this ginseng soup, his fingers trembled slightly. Emperor Wenxuan was only joking. Although there were many rules in the palace, he did not follow every single one of them. He wanted to tell him to forget it, but when he looked up, he saw the Guang Yan's pale face and pale fingers holding the bowl of soup so tightly. At certain times, humans would have intuition. The bowl of ginseng soup was steaming hot. It had been left for a while, so it was just right. A faint aroma could be smelled. However, the person in front of him looked a little too nervous. The emperor's gaze instantly darkened. He slowly opened his mouth, and his tone was unfathomable. Guang Yan, drink a mouthful first. Imperial father, there are no other spoons here, it's fine. I can order someone to get more. Now, taste the soup first. Under such circumstances, the Guang Yan could not avoid it. He could only pick up the soup and use the silver spoon to scoop a spoonful. He slowly brought it to his mouth, but he was reluctant to touch it. Emperor Wenxuan looked at him and his heart sank. In the past, although he knew that the Guang Yan was tyrannical, they never dared to do anything to him. Moreover, he was his own flesh and blood. He also turned a blind eye to the Guang Yan's conduct outside. This time, even if something happened to Su Jingfu, Emperor Wenxuan still wanted to protect him. Even just now, before he handed the bowl of soup to the Guang Yan, Emperor Wenxuan still wanted to give the Guang Yan a chance. He did not want to mention the matter of changing the crown prince until the very last moment. However, he never expected that the Guang Yan would actually kill his father and the emperor. Why aren't you drinking? He said in a low voice as he looked at his son, who was a stranger to him. The Guang Yan gritted his teeth and lowered his head to drink the ginseng soup. However, at the last moment, as if he had touched a soldering iron, he suddenly flung the bowl away and stood up. The bowl of soup fell onto the velvet carpet in front of the couch and splattered all over it. The Guang Yan suddenly came back to his senses and realized how stupid his actions were. He trembled as he looked at his father on the couch. Emperor Wenxuan looked at him with disappointment, pain, and a coldness that had never been seen before. I didn't know, the emperor said word by word, your purpose for coming here today was to take my life. No, I didn't, the Guang Yan subconsciously denied, I didn't do that. I only need to find an imperial physician to examine it and I will know immediately. Emperor Wenxuan's expression was cold. He stood up and was about to get off the couch when he shouted, someone, Imperial Father. The Guang Yan rushed over and covered his mouth. He said anxiously, I didn't. Emperor Wenxuan's health was not good these days. After being pounced on, he fell directly onto the couch. The Guang Yan took the opportunity to sit on him. He glanced at the cotton pillow on the couch and grabbed it without thinking. He tightly covered Emperor Wenxuan's mouth and nose. There was only one thought in his mind, I can't let Emperor Wenxuan say anything. The person under him struggled with all his might, but how could an old and sick person compare to a person in the prime of his life? The more he struggled, the more ferocious the Guang Yan's expression became. He almost pressed his entire body weight on Emperor Wenxuan and pressed the cotton pillow as if he was pressing a dying fish. He said in a short voice, don't shout. I told you not to shout. The fish that was thrown into the desert from the swamp desperately swayed its body, hoping for a chance to live. Its scales were flung around until the scorching sun dried the fish's eyes. It was completely lifeless. After an unknown amount of time, the struggling under him gradually stopped. The Guang Yan's forehead was covered in sweat. He suddenly released his hand and pulled the cotton pillow away. Emperor Wenxuan was lying on his back. His face was purple and his pupils were dilated. Under the dim light of the bedchamber, he looked like a demon. The Guang Yan was shocked. He fell off the couch and sat on the ground. He could not help but take 2 steps back. After a long time, he came back to his senses and realized that Emperor Wenxuan had really been suffocated to death by him this time. The eunuchs outside had already been sent away by him. Guang Yan had come here today to poison the emperor. However, he did not expect that the bowl of ginseng soup mixed with bo poison would be discovered by Emperor Wenxuan. In the end, he was suffocated to death by him. The bedchamber was empty. The sound of the wind was like the wailing of a demon, causing a chill to run down one's spine. The Guang Yan endured the fear in his heart and stood up. He walked in front of Emperor Wenxuan. He first picked up the bowl of soup on the ground and placed it back into the mahogany basket. Then, he walked in front of Emperor Wenxuan's bed and helped Emperor Wenxuan to lie down on the bed. He smoothed the emperor's eyes and covered him with a blanket. Seeing his father's eyes open, the Guang Yan became bolder. His eyes flashed with a trace of madness. He looked at Emperor Wenxuan's corpse and said in a low voice, "Father, please don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not giving the throne to me. If you didn't force me, I wouldn't have done this. The throne was originally mine. Father, just watch how your son sits on this throne, just watch." He slowly clenched his fists and suddenly stood up. He took the mahogany basket and turned to leave the bedchamber. It started to rain again in the night. He Yen vaguely heard the sound of rain outside in his sleep. After being woken up, he couldn't sleep anymore. He turned over and hugged the person beside him by the waist. It wasn't that he wanted to take advantage of Xiaoju. It was just that the weather was cold. It was much warmer to hug someone beside him. Xiaoju slept very quietly. Her sleeping posture was also very good. It was very different from her sprawling posture. Her movements also woke Xiaoju up. Xiaoju lowered her head and looked at the person who was hugging her tightly. She asked softly, "Why aren't you sleeping?" "I was woken up." He Yen said in a muffled voice, "I can't sleep." This was a little strange. Although many years of military life allowed her to be alert in her sleep, ever since she came to the Xiao family, she still slept very soundly. It was rare for her to have such insomnia. He Yen didn't know why, but she felt a little uneasy. It was as if something was going to happen. Xiaoju noticed her uneasiness. Xiaoju paused. She rested her chin on her head and asked, "Do you want to sit on the roof?" "He Yen," she said, "it's raining outside." "Xiaoju, it's just a joke." He Yen wanted to say something but stopped. She felt that after Su Jingfu's death, things weren't over yet. The battle between the Guang Yan and the fourth prince had just begun. Whether it was Xiaoju or the Xiao family, they were in a delicate position. She was afraid that it wouldn't be easy to resolve. However, it was a little disappointing to talk about these annoying things in the middle of the night. He Yen was thinking about it when there was a knock on the door. Fei Nu's voice sounded from outside, "Young master, I have something to report." She was startled. It was the middle of the night. Why was Fei Nu in such a hurry? What could have happened? This time, she didn't feel sleepy at all. Xiaoju got up from the bed and lit the oil lamp in the room. He Yen also got up from the bed and put on his clothes. When the door was opened, the wind and rain from outside drifted in. The room suddenly became much colder. Fei Nu walked in. His clothes were wet and his expression was serious. Xiaoju asked him, "What's the matter?" "There's news from the palace. The emperor has passed away." He Yen and Xiaoju were both shocked when they heard this. Xiaoju frowned. "When?" "The news just came." Fei Nu said, "Young master, do you want to go to the palace?" Xiaoju thought for a moment and said, "I understand. Go and prepare the carriage. I'll go to the palace immediately." Fei Nu nodded and left. He Yen took 2 steps forward with the oil lamp in his hand. He couldn't hide his surprise. The emperor, she didn't expect Emperor Wenxian to suddenly pass away. Although there were rumors about Emperor Wenxian's poor health these days, this news was too sudden. She was confused. There were many rumors about Emperor Wenxian. However, in He Yan's opinion, although he wasn't a wise emperor, he was definitely not a fatuous one. Xiao Zhu was getting dressed when He Yan asked, "Do you want me to go to the palace with you?" Fei Nu's words were simple. No one knew what was going on in the palace. "No need. You stay in the residence." Xiao Zhu said, "I'll go to the palace first to see what's going on." He Yan nodded. Although he was anxious, he knew that Xiao Zhu was right. Her position was not high enough for her to go to the palace in such a situation. As the young mistress of a Xiao family, there was no reason for her to go. But, Xiao Zhu saw her worried expression and turned around to pat her shoulder. "Don't worry. I'll go back to the residence immediately after I see what's going on." "Xiao Zhu, be careful," she reminded her. Xiao Zhu got dressed, picked up her sword and went out. He Yan was no longer in the mood to continue sleeping. He walked to the window and opened it. The fine raindrops drifted into the room along with the wind outside. The table was instantly covered with a thin layer of water droplets. The wind blew on He Yan's face, causing the hazy sleepiness to disappear. His mind was incomparably clear. Although he shouldn't be thinking about such things at this time, when one thing happened, many things would follow. Before Emperor Wenxian passed away, he didn't mention the matter of changing the crown prince. Although there was a lot of discussion in the imperial court, if there was no change, the crown prince would inherit the throne. However, everyone knew what kind of person the crown prince of Guangyan was. Although the Guangyan wasn't implicated in the Su Jingfu case, He Yan had asked Xiao Zhu before. The Supreme Court had received orders from Emperor Wenxian to protect the crown prince of Guangyan in secret. Emperor Wenxian didn't have the heart to touch the crown prince because the crown prince was his blood. However, as the future emperor of Dawei, a despicable person who could lead a wolf into the house for the sake of power was not fit to be the emperor. The rain seemed to have no end, and so did the night. Chapter 253. Early the next morning, Xiao Zhu did not return. Xiao Jing also entered the palace, while Bai Rongwei and He Yan stayed in the residence. Bai Rongwei was pregnant, so He Yan did not dare to let her worry about him. He did not tell her much about the palace. After the maidservants helped Bai Rongwei into the room to rest, she sat in the courtyard and waited for Xiao Zhu to return. When Xiao Zhu returned, it was already night time. The sky was completely dark, but the courtyard was already lit with lanterns. He Yan was sitting at the table, absent-mindedly reading a book. When he saw Xiao Zhu return, he was covered in dew and his expression was somewhat cold. He hurriedly got up and walked over, asking, "How is it?" Xiao Zhu put the wine on the table and took off her outer garment. After a moment of silence, she said, "The national funeral will be held in 3 days." "So soon?" He Yan was surprised. Not only that, before the emperor died, he left behind a posthumous edict. 4 concubines and 20 palace maids will be buried with him. He Yan blurted out, "Impossible." Regarding the death of the emperor, there were indeed records of women being buried with him. However, this rule had been abolished long before the previous emperor ascended the throne. At that time, Emperor Hezong thought that the burial of women was too cruel, so it was abolished. This was a rule that had been abolished. Moreover, although Emperor Wenxian did not have much political achievements, he was still considered benevolent and tolerant. He would not have made such a posthumous edict. Among the 4 concubines buried with him, there was concubine Lan. Xiao Zhu said coldly. He Yan immediately understood, "You mean, this posthumous edict is fake?" Emperor Wenxian doted on concubine Lan for many years. Now that Emperor Wenxian had died, no one could protect concubine Lan. He could use a fake posthumous edict to get rid of this thorn in his side. If the posthumous edict is fake. He Yan raised his head and looked at Xiao Zhu. His eyes moved slightly. "Have you seen His Majesty?" Xiao Zhu looked at him. "No." He Yan felt his heart skip a beat. If he hadn't seen Emperor Wenshuan with his own eyes, he wouldn't know if Emperor Wenshuan had really died of illness. If it had been something else, I asked the eunuchs in the bedchamber at that time. Before the emperor went to bed, he had seen the fourth prince. Such a coincidence? He Yen frowned slightly. But if it was the fourth prince who attacked the emperor, there was no reason at all. After the national funeral, it will be the coronation ceremony. Xiao Ju sat down on a chair. The crown prince will be enthroned. He Yan's voice sank. This is not a good thing. Before the imperial edict to change the crown prince appeared, Emperor Wenxian's imperial carriage would arrive and the crown prince would ascend the throne. Not to mention whether or not the crown prince could sit on the throne. Once the crown prince ascended the throne, the Xiao family's situation would not be optimistic. Seeing He Yan's frown, Xiao Ju smiled and comforted her. Don't worry, I will go to the fourth prince's residence tomorrow. He did not say anything and only looked at He Yan calmly. In an instant, He Yan understood. She lowered her head and did not say anything. After a while, she raised her head again and put her hand on the back of Xiao Ju's hand. Her voice was firm. Go. Emperor Wenxian had passed away and the national funeral was 27 days old. During the national funeral, the court officials were forbidden to eat, drink, and have fun. The date was set and they would enter the imperial mausoleum 3 days later. Because of Emperor Wenxian's posthumous edict to be buried with the emperor, the ones who objected the most were naturally the fourth prince, Guang Shui, and the fifth prince, Guang Ji. This was because concubine Lan and noble lady Ni were buried with the emperor. Guang Ji was still young and only knew how to cry and make a fuss. Guang Shui and the imperial censor objected, but they were rejected by the Guang Yan with the excuse of obeying the posthumous edict. From the looks of it, it seemed that the Guang Yan had seized the throne. However, it was hard to say for the time being. As long as there was no coronation ceremony, the dust would not settle. Even if he really did ascend the throne and become the emperor, it was not unheard of in history that an emperor was pulled down and replaced. Everyone in the court was in danger and was jittery for a while. After Emperor Wenxian passed away, the Guang Yan, as the crown prince, temporarily took charge of all matters in the court. The first thing he did was to release the Udo envoys who had been placed under house arrest. He also gave the order to allow the Yudo to seek peace and intended to allow the Wu Tua to open a market in Dawei. As soon as this order was issued, the entire court was in an uproar. If he had wanted to do this before, although there would have been objections, it would not have been so strong. However, after the incident at the Heavenly Star platform, even though the Guang Yan knew that the Yudo had wild ambitions, they still insisted on seeking peace. This was truly disappointing. The imperial censor's reports flew to the crown prince's desk one by one, but they were all thrown into the pile of waste paper. The Guang Yan seemed to have made up his mind on this matter and did not care about anyone else. The people of Shuo capital did not know the pros and cons of this matter, and the civil officials were mostly neutral. Only the military officials were indignant, but there was nothing they could do. Many years ago, Su Jingfu had already allowed Emperor Wenxian to use the civil officials. Now, the position of the military officials was far less important than that of the civil officials. In Count Shi Jin's residence, Chu Zhao looked at the long letter in his hand. After a while, he clutched the letter in his hand. The letter was crumpled into a ball, revealing his complicated and slightly angry feelings. He rarely had such a moment. Seeing this, his trusted aide carefully asked, "Fourth young master." Chu Zhao threw the letter into the brazier and pressed his forehead. Although he knew that the Guang Yan were brainless idiots, he did not expect them to be so daring. He had clearly warned the Guang Yan that killing the emperor was not desirable, but the Guang Yan still did it. He was afraid that Empress Xiang and her family had also helped in the background. Otherwise, everything would not have gone so smoothly. Fourth young master, in 3 days, the emperor will enter the imperial mausoleum, and the crown prince will ascend to the throne. Isn't this a good thing for fourth young master? After all, Su Jingfu was no longer around, and a portion of Su Jingfu's people were under Chu Xiao's command. In a way, Chu Xiao was also one of the crown prince's people. As long as the crown prince became the emperor, his fourth young master's future would only get better and better. Chu Xiao laughed, but there was no warmth in his eyes. He can't be the emperor. The confidant raised his head and looked at him. He is too impatient. If there was no posthumous edict, perhaps there would be a chance to turn things around. But once the posthumous edict came out, it only hastened his own death. He said these rebellious words, but there was no fear in his eyes. It was as if he was not talking about the imperial family. That posthumous edict must be fake. I just don't know if it was the crown prince or the fourth prince who did it. If it was the crown prince, then he is not only stupid, but also ridiculous. If it was the fourth prince. Chu Xiao smiled. Then no matter what, the crown prince will not be his opponent. You mean, before entering the imperial mausoleum, if the concubine Lan wants to be buried with the emperor, the fourth prince will not allow this to happen. Before entering the imperial mausoleum and ascending to the throne, he will not be able to keep his position. Even now, although every word he said was shocking, there wasn't much fluctuation in his expression, as if he had long since expected everything before him. The confidant felt uneasy. Fourth young master, if the crown prince is not worth following, what should we do now? It was too late to follow the fourth prince now. Moreover, they had too little bargaining chips. They did not have the capital to make a deal with the fourth prince. Chu Xiao looked out of the window. It was already spring, but the weather was still unusually cold. He had originally followed Su Jingfu. If it was not for the Xiaoju, with Su Jingfu watching over the Guangyan, it was not impossible for him to sit on the throne. But without Su Jingfu, no matter how long it took, the Guangyan would not be the Guangyan's opponent. One day of fighting the enemy, one day of suffering. Sometimes, Chu Xiao felt that he should thank the Xiaoju. It was because of the Xiaoju that he gained his freedom. But at the same time, he lost everything. Now that he followed the Guangyan, it was really the same as walking down the dark path. But if he followed the Guangyan now, at most, he could only linger on with his last breath. Everything he had gained because of Su Jingfu would be lost in an instant. Fate was cruel to him because the path opposite the darkness was not the light. Comparing the two, abandoning one path did not mean that he could choose the other. It was just a measure of how much he had lost. He stood up. I'm going to the fourth prince's residence. The night in Jinling was still bustling as usual. Few people came to Yunlu because of the national mourning. The girls had stopped playing the zither early and only sat in the building. Hua Yuxian also changed into plain clothes. Although the national mourning did not force the people to wear plain clothes, at this juncture, it was better not to make any mistakes. The sky was already dark. In the evening, the rain that had stopped started again. Hua Yuxian held the last packet of red bean cakes that she had just bought from Guangfu Zhai and hid under the eaves of a tea house by the Qinhuai River to avoid the rain. Just as she stood still, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure coming from the corner. Sir Yang. Hua Yuxian could not help but call out. The man turned his head to look. He was wearing a long sandalwood robe and had a scholarly appearance. It was the governor of Jinling, Yang Mingji. Yang Mingji saw Hua Yuxian and was startled. He must have returned from outside and did not bring an umbrella. His clothes were mostly wet. He hesitated for a moment before walking over. He stood beside Hua Yuxian and said, Miss Yuxian. Hua Yuxian smiled and looked outside. The rain will not stop for a while. Why don't we sit here and have a cup of tea? We can leave when the rain stops. Yang Mingji thought for a moment and nodded. During the national mourning period, he was an official and could not drink alcohol. He ordered a pot of tea and a little tea. The tea house was next to the Qinhuai River. When he opened the window, he could see the boats on the Qinhuai River. In the rain, they were like dark stars in the night. It seems that every time I see Sir Yang, you are alone. Hua Yuxian smiled. Although Yang Mingji was the governor of Jinling, he was different from the previous governor. He did not like to show off when he went out. Even though he had been the governor of Jinling for a few years, not everyone in Jinling city knew him. Yang Mingji lowered his head and smiled. He did not say anything. Hua Yuxian was curious. When she saw this group of young people in Yunlu, she had a deep impression of them because they had experienced the world together. Although Yang Ming was not as stunning as Governor Xiao, nor was he as confident as young Master Yan, nor was he as successful as young Master Yang, he was still handsome and outstanding among the group of youths and had quite an uncommon air about him. When they met again, although he was already the governor of Jinling, he was much quieter. He was not as arrogant as before. Sir Yang, do you know that young Master Xiao got married not long ago? Hua Yuxian took a sip of tea. Kai Lian and I sent people to send congratulatory gifts. Sir Yang, you are busy with work and probably did not have time to visit. Speaking of which, young Master Xiao looks cold and unapproachable, but he treats Miss He very well. Thinking of this, Hua Yuxian felt a little emotional. When she saw that He Yan was a girl, Xiao Ju took good care of He Yan. She did not expect the two of them to get married so quickly. It seemed that fate was a strange thing. If it was the right person, it did not need 8 to 10 years to find out their true feelings. Yang Mingji looked down at the teacup in front of him. He paused, then said, yes. But he was not as calm as he looked. In fact, Xiao Ju did not invite him. Of course, he also did not think that he would receive an invitation from Xiao Ju. As early as many years ago, the brotherhood between him and Xiao Ju had already vanished into thin air. Back then, Yang Mingji turned his head and looked at the river outside the window. The river water was winding and cold. The boats on the water slowly flowed back to many years ago. Many years ago, he was still a student at the Xianchang school. He did not know the dangers of the world, nor did he know the hardships of the world. He had friends that he sincerely admired, like-minded, generous, and righteous. He also thought that the friendship between young people should last forever. Until the Xiao family met with an accident. He was anxious and promised to help to go home and find his father. But he did not expect that his father, who always praised Xiao Ju in front of him, would reject his pleas. At that time, Yang Mingji was very confused. He knelt down and begged. It was probably because his attitude was too firm that Sir Yang could not persuade him and finally told him the truth. It was only then that Yang Mingji knew that his father had always been on Su Jingfu's side. The entire Yang family was under the care of Su Jingfu. If you help him, you will be harming the Yang family. His father stood in front of him and shook his head. You choose. The young man fell to the ground, his eyes full of confusion. He did not understand why his father, who always taught his own people to live righteously, would be like this. If the family teachings he had learned since he was young were just words on paper, then what had he been persevering for all these years? No one could answer him. He broke off with Xiao Ju and chose his family. At the same time, he felt that he was no longer qualified to be Xiao Ju's friend. Later, he took the imperial examination and did not stay in Shuajing. He purposely went to Jinling. He could not face the Yang family, and he could not face himself. He could only pretend that he was still the young man who cared about the world and had a clear distinction between good and evil in this place where he had traveled with his schoolmates in the virtuous Prosperity Hall. But until he met Xiao Ju and the others again, Yang Mingji suddenly realized that Xiao Ju, Lin Shuanghe, Yan He, and the others had not changed. He was the only one who had changed. They still went to Luoyun restaurant together, drinking and talking, but they were not in the same mood as before. The old days were like a huge mountain slowly rising from the ground. Unknowingly, they were already insurmountable. Hua Yuxian seemed to see the sadness in his eyes. She paused and finally changed the topic. Now that the emperor has passed away, the crown prince allowed Yuto to open a market in Dawei. Jinling is prosperous. If the market is to be in Jinling, Yang Mingji came back to his senses and shook his head. The market will not be in Jinling. Sir, I will stop it. Yang Mingji lowered his head and smiled. If I am still the governor of Jinling. In fact, ever since Su Jingfu's accident, the Yang family had sent him a letter. They told Yang Mingji to look for Xiao Ju. On account of his old friendship with Xiao Ju, they begged Xiao Ju to be merciful. Yang Mingji ignored them. Everyone should be responsible for their own choices, just like how he chose his family and the Yang family chose Su Jingfu. Later on, when he ignored them and Emperor Wenshuan passed away, his family in the capital must have made a new choice in the shortest time possible. But he could not. In these few years, Yang Mingji stayed in Jinling to repay his debt. Now that it had come to this, he did not plan to continue doing things against his conscience. Opening a market would only bring harm to the people of Dawei. Those Yuto had wild ambitions. Once they entered Jinling, who knew what they would do to the people? This was inviting a wolf into the house. The officials in the court were high and mighty. They thought that this fire would not burn them, so they did not do anything. But once the fire was ignited, it did not matter if they were officials or commoners. He was very clear that in the capital, other than a few bold imperial censors, there should not be many civil officials who dared to raise objections at this time. Yang Mingji also knew that when his memorial appeared in front of the Guangyan Palace, his career as the governor of Jinling would come to an end. Perhaps he would lose his life. Perhaps he would implicate his family. But so what? When he was young, he read, "Be honest with your heart, be honest with yourself, be loyal to the ruler, be respectful to the leader, receive things with trust, be lenient with your subordinates, be respectful to the leader, be respectful to the leader, receive things with trust, be lenient with your subordinates, and negotiate with respect." These are the 7 essentials of being an official. At that time, the youths of the Xian Changguan were eager to try. Everyone thought that they could do it and become a good official. But after so many years, how many of them persisted? The youths had the courage to stubbornly resist all the injustice in the world. They always thought that there would be a way out. But after a long time, they gradually became helpless and went with the flow. Just like himself. Young people with lofty ambitions and no one heard of them for a long time. In the end, they would rot with the grass and trees. "Young master," Hua Yuxian smiled and called him. Yang Mingji raised his head. "If I am the governor of Jinling, then I am official Yang. If I am not the governor of Jinling, then I am little young master Yang." The beauty by the Qinhuai River was as charming as in his memory. She raised the teacup in front of her. In this servant's opinion, no matter what position little young master occupies, you will always be a hero who abhorred evil and stood up for justice in entering Cloud's tower. Jinling will get better and better. So, little young master, you must not belittle yourself. His friend's voice was soft, like the old days. It contained his past struggles and unbearable hardships. It was like the fog covering the sky above the Qinhuai River. After the fog dissipated, there was still a pool of spring water. He lowered his head. After a long time, he suddenly smiled. He raised the teacup in front of him and touched it with the teacup of his old friend. "You are right," he said in a low voice. "Everything will get better and better." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.